welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. The face on my kitchen table was taking shape. One eye, half a nose, most of a mouth, and patches of cheeks and forehead. I started calling it a leaner, though I couldn't say why that name came to mind. I bought a shadow box to display the fragments, arranging them to suggest a complete face behind broken glass. My dreams grew vivid. A woman in white walking through my garden at night, nailing in the dirt behind the shed. Sometimes digging, sometimes being buried, her face always turned away. The shadow box began to emit a subtle vibration. Placing my hand against the glass induced a pins and needles sensation that traveled up my arm and settled behind my ear as a whisper too faint to understand. I found myself sitting before it for hours, head tilted, straining to hear. My neighbors remarked on the flowers growing behind my shed how unusual they were, blooming out of season with petals the color of skin and centers dark as pupils. I hadn't planted anything yet. The next piece emerged not from the ground, but from my bathroom sink, rising up through the drain during my morning routine. A porcelain ear, perfect in every detail down to the tiny hole of its canal. Water beaded on its surface like sweat. I called a historian friend to ask about the porcelain. "Bring it over," he said, but when I tried to remove a piece from the shadow box, my fingers recoiled. The porcelain was hot, nearly blistering. The frame had sealed itself shut. That night the scratching reached a fever pitch. It surrounded my bed, coming from all four walls simultaneously. With each scratch, the light bulb in my bedside lamp dimmed and brightened, dimmed and brightened. Under the scratching, I detected a voice. "Not enough," it seemed to say, "not enough pieces." I returned to digging with renewed determination. No longer confined to daylight hours, I worked under the harsh glow of floodlights, breaking ground in an ever-widening circle. My neighbors watched from behind curtains but never approached. The hole grew deeper. The mirror in my bathroom began to show inconsistencies. My reflection would pause a fraction of a second after I moved, or smile when I wasn't smiling. One morning I noticed my reflected self had a completed porcelain face superimposed over my features. When I reached up to touch my cheek, my fingers met warm ceramic instead of skin. I found the final pieces in a single night of frantic digging: a matching ear, the missing eye, portions of forehead and chin. As I placed the last fragment into the shadow box, completing a leaner's face, all the lights in my house surged bright white, then died. In darkness, the porcelain began to glow with a faint inner light, revealing hairline cracks across its surface that hadn't been there before. Through these cracks seeped something dark and viscous, dripping down inside the shadow box and pooling at its base. The frame fell open at my touch now, the glass front swinging wide. The leaner's completed face regarded me, no longer in fragments but whole, the cracks now forming a delicate tracery across her features like veins under skin. Her painted lips parted slightly, revealing teeth that hadn't been there before. "You found me," came a voice from the shadow box, though the lips didn't move. "Now we can begin." My hand moved toward the face, drawn by an irresistible pull. The porcelain felt like flesh now, yielding under my fingertips, warm, alive. The dark fluid seeping from the cracks coated my fingers, absorbing into my skin. Where it touched, my own skin hardened and cooled, taking on a porcelain sheen. "What are we beginning?" I asked, watching with detached fascination as the ceramic texture crept past my wrist. "Completion," Alina replied. "I found your fragments buried in my garden once. Now we trade places." The porcelain spread up my arm across my chest, reaching for my neck. I should have been terrified, but a strange calm descended instead. Through the window I could see my garden, the disturbed earth behind the shed now smoothed over and sprouting new growth. Flowers with faces turned toward the house, toward me. My jawline hardened, my lips froze in a permanent smile. The last thing I felt before my transformation completed was a curious lightness, as if all my worries were being sealed beneath a perfect, impermeable glaze. Beyond my window, a woman who wore my face walked through my garden, nailing in the fresh dirt, beginning to dig, looking for someone else's smile to unearth. Through porcelain eyes, I watched her work, patient in my new permanence. After all, there are so many pieces still buried, waiting to be found. So many incomplete faces needing to be made whole. And Alina had waited so long for her turn to be the gardener rather than the garden. Story 2, I had just stepped out of the bathroom when I heard a faint splash, then a whisper. I froze. The water had stopped running. Everything was still. The air smelled of steam and mildew, but underneath it was something sharper, metallic, like blood. I leaned closer. From the drain, a voice called softly, "Who's there?" My heart lurched into my throat. The bathroom mirror had fogged completely, leaving only a gray canvas of condensation. I stood motionless, the towel clutched around my waist, droplets of water still clinging to my shoulders. "Hello," I whispered, immediately regretting it. Nothing, just the persistent drip from the faucet echoing against porcelain. I convinced myself it was a trick of acoustics, perhaps a neighbor's television, sound traveling through pipes. The rational explanation calmed me enough to finish drying off and leave the bathroom. That night, sleep came fitfully. My dreams filled with narrow, wet passages and distant voices calling my name from somewhere deep below. I woke with damp sheets clinging to my skin, though the room felt cold. The next morning I stood before the shower, hesitating. The drain stared back at me, a small dark eye in the white ceramic floor. I turned the water on hot, watching steam billow up around me. As I bathed, I kept my gaze fixed on that dark circle, waiting. Nothing happened until I turned off the water. As the last drops disappeared down the drain, I heard it again, not a voice this time, but a soft humming. The melody was familiar yet distorted, like a childhood song played at the wrong speed. I grabbed my phone and began recording. The humming continued for nearly a minute before fading. When I played back the recording, there was only static and the sound of water dripping. For a week, I documented everything. After each shower, I would kneel by the drain, recording device in hand. Sometimes I heard nothing. Other times, whispers emerged between the drip's words just beyond comprehension, a voice neither male nor female. I began taking notes in a journal. Day 8, voice asked about my mother. How would it know I was thinking about her cancer? Day 9, found black residue around drain. Smells like wet soil and copper. Cleaning doesn't remove it completely. Day 11, voice hummed the lullaby Mom used to sing. Impossible. The mirror began to fog even when I took cold showers. Patterns appeared in the condensation, not quite words, not quite symbols, but something in between. I photographed them, but the images always came out blurred, as if captured during an earthquake. Sleep became a distant memory. My appetite diminished. Colleagues commented on the shadows beneath my eyes, how my clothes hung loose on my frame. I nodded and smiled while my mind remained fixed on the drain and what might be living inside it. I tried plugging the drain with a rubber stopper. Water backed up normally, but when I removed the stopper, the water drained in a perfect spiral, faster than should be possible. That night, the voice didn't whisper, it laughed. I purchased a small waterproof camera designed for plumbing inspections. As I fed the flexible cable down the drain, my hands trembled with anticipation and fear. The display showed normal plumbing at first, dark, wet pipes narrowing as they descended. Then the camera stopped moving, not stuck, but as if something held it. On screen, darkness gave way to a red glow illuminating the pipe's interior. The walls pulsed gently, like breathing tissue. "You're looking for me," came the voice, clearer now through the camera's speaker. "Why not join me instead?" The camera jerked downward, pulled by an unseen force. I yanked back, but the cable snapped, the broken end returning slick with something that wasn't water. That night, all the drains in my home made noises: sink, shower, bathtub, a symphony of whispers and gurgles. I stuffed towels into each one, turned on every light, and sat awake until morning. I couldn't stay away for long. The shower called to me, promising answers. The need to know overcame my fear. I stood under the hot spray, letting it mask my tears of frustration. "What are you?" I asked the drain directly. The water around my feet darkened, swirling with something like ink. The liquid rose despite the open drain, climbing past my ankles, warm and viscous. "I'm what lives between," replied the voice, no longer coming from below but all around me. Between waking and sleeping, between knowing and fearing. The dark water rose to my knees, my waist, my chest, yet the shower head had stopped running. The bathroom door had disappeared, replaced by smooth tile. The mirror reflected nothing now, just an empty bathroom. "We've been waiting for someone who would listen," the voice continued, now a chorus of whispers. "Someone who would look deeper." The water reached my chin. I should have been terrified, yet a strange calm washed over me. The water felt like velvet against my skin, like being wrapped in dark silk. "What happens now?" I asked, my mouth barely above the rising darkness. "Now you see what we say." The dark liquid covered my face, filled my nose and mouth. I expected to choke, to fight for air, but breathing came naturally. My eyes adjusted to see through the murk. The bathroom walls dissolved, revealing a vast network of tunnels stretching endlessly in all directions, illuminated by a dull red glow. Figures moved in the distance, their forms fluid and ever-changing. They beckoned to me. I took a step forward, then another. The journal I'd kept floated past me, pages dissolving in the darkness. My phone sank into the depths, the screen flickering before going dark. None of it mattered anymore. I walked for what felt like both seconds and centuries, until I reached a chamber where the figures had gathered. They surrounded something in the center, a drain much like my own, but massive, spiraling downward into infinite blackness. "What's down there?" I asked, my voice strange in my ears. "Your world," they answered in unison. We watch through the small openings between realms. Sometimes we call out. Rarely does anyone answer. One of the figures approached, its form resolving into something almost human, with features that shifted like smoke. It reached for my hand. "You can return if you wish, but you'll always hear us now. You'll see the signs others miss. The space between worlds grows thinner with each crossing." I considered this offer, this burden of knowledge. Behind me lay the path back to my bathroom, my life, my sanity perhaps. Ahead lay mysteries beyond comprehension. I made my choice. Now I visit the shower drain daily, bringing news from one side to the other. I keep my hair long to hide the gills forming along my neck. My skin has developed a subtle iridescence visible only in certain light. Sometimes I hear others, people in their bathrooms, pausing at unusual sounds from their drains. I whisper to them, testing, inviting. Mostly they ignore me, rationalize me away. But occasionally someone leans closer and whispers back, "Who's there?" And the cycle begins again. Story 3, it leaned against a tree like someone had left it in a hurry. I wouldn't have stopped if it hadn't reflected something strange, trees I couldn't see, a sky that wasn't quite right. The air around it felt heavier, tinged with the scent of wet bark and something like burning paper. When I stepped closer, the reflection smiled first. Not my reflection, something else, someone else. The face wore features similar to mine, but arranged in subtly wrong proportions, eyes slightly too wide, mouth stretched a fraction too far. I blinked. The reflection blinked a moment later. The rational part of my brain suggested I walk away, leave the mirror for someone else to find. Yet I knelt down, my fingers hovering inches from its ornate silver frame. Intricate patterns spiraled along the edges, carved figures that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. I touched the frame, cold, unnaturally cold like metal left outside during winter, despite the warm breeze rustling through the leaves overhead. The sensation traveled up my arm, raising goosebumps across my skin. Still, I couldn't resist picking it up. It weighed less than expected. The mirror seemed to adjust to my grip, settling comfortably against my chest as I carried it back to my car. Something whispered from within the glass, not words exactly, but intentions floating at the edge of comprehension. I told myself it was just the wind in the trees. At home, I placed the mirror against the wall in my living room. It looked wrong there, too ornate for my minimal decor, too ancient against modern furniture, yet I couldn't bring myself to hide it away. I sat on the couch, watching my distorted reflection watch me. That night I dreamed of corridors I'd never walked, of rooms filled with versions of myself standing motionless, only their eyes following me as I passed. I woke drenched in sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs. From the living room came a soft tapping sound, rhythmic and patient, like fingernails against glass. I didn't investigate. Instead, I pulled the blankets over my head like a child afraid of monsters in the closet. Morning arrived with silence and normalcy. The mirror hung innocently on the wall where I'd left it, except I hadn't hung it up. I'd merely propped it against the wall. Now metal hooks embedded themselves into the plaster, the frame flush against the surface as if it had always been there. I approached warily, noticing how the room behind me reflected perfectly, yet my own image seemed delayed, movements occurring a fraction of a second after mine. When I raised my hand, my reflection waited a breath before mimicking me. I documented everything in a notebook. Scientific observation might dispel this growing unease. I took photos of the mirror with my phone, but when I reviewed them, the images showed only an empty frame, no reflection at all. Recording video yielded similar results. The mirror appeared as a black void in the footage. That evening, as I prepared dinner, I noticed the knife block had been rearranged, handles pointing in the wrong direction. The air in the kitchen smelled faintly of burning paper again. From the living room came the sound of breathing that wasn't mine. I ate standing up, facing the entrance to the living room, watching for movement. The mirror remained still, yet somehow felt aware, watching, waiting. Sleep came reluctantly that night. I dreamed of standing before the mirror, watching as the reflection stepped backward, receding deeper into the glass while maintaining eye contact. It beckoned with a too-wide smile. Behind it stretched a vast room filled with mirrors, each containing another version of me, all slightly wrong in unique ways. I jolted awake to find myself standing in front of the mirror, one hand pressed against its surface. The glass felt warm now, pulsing like skin. I yanked my hand away, noticing a red mark on my palm where it had touched the surface. In the mirror, my reflection kept its hand pressed against the glass, head tilted in curiosity. I began to notice changes in my home. Books rearranged on shelves, water running when I hadn't touched the faucet. The persistent smell of burning paper growing stronger near the mirror. When I mentioned these occurrences during a phone call with a friend, they asked if I felt okay, commenting that I sounded different. I recorded my voice and played it back. The cadence was wrong, syllables stretched oddly, emphasis placed on unusual parts of words. It reminded me of someone learning a language by imitation without understanding meaning. The mirror grew, not physically, its dimensions remained the same, but its presence expanded, dominating the room even when I wasn't looking at it. I covered it with a sheet one night, securing the fabric with tape and string, determined to break whatever hold it had on me. In the morning, the sheet lay neatly folded on the floor. The mirror had moved to my bedroom, hanging directly across from my bed. My reflection no longer mirrored my movements accurately. It stood straighter than I did, smiled when I frowned, tilted its head when I spoke aloud. Once I caught it mouthing words I couldn't understand while I remained silent. I decided to remove it from my home. I wrapped the mirror in blankets and drove back to where I'd found it. The forest looked different now, trees closer together, underbrush thicker, paths narrower. I walked for what felt like hours but couldn't find the exact spot. When I unwrapped the mirror to check my location in its reflection, I saw not the forest around me but my living room. My reflection smiled and turned away, walking deeper into my house as seen through the glass. Panic rising, I smashed the mirror against a rock. The glass cracked but didn't shatter, splitting my reflection into fragments, each piece containing a different expression: anger, amusement, hunger. The crack sealed itself slowly, like ice reforming over water. My reflection reunited, now standing closer to the surface than before, hands pressed against the glass from the inside. I buried the mirror in the forest, digging a hole deep enough that no casual passerby would find it. As soil covered the reflective surface, I heard a muffled sound like laughter. That night, mud tracked through my home in footprints that weren't mine. They led from the front door to the bathroom. There, installed perfectly on the wall, hung the mirror, glass clean of dirt, frame gleaming in the harsh light. My reflection waited patiently, standing closer to the surface than physically possible, its face nearly pressing against the boundary between our worlds. When I approached, it didn't move with me. Instead, it reached out, hand extending toward the glass. I realized then what it wanted, what it had always wanted: an exchange, a replacement. I backed away, gathered essentials into a bag, and left my home. I drove without destination, stopping only when exhaustion demanded. In a small motel room, I finally felt safe enough to sleep. The dream came again, corridors of mirrors, reflections watching with hungry eyes. This time I recognized the hallway. It was the motel corridor outside my room. I woke to find the bathroom door open, light spilling across the floor. I hadn't left it that way. From within came the scent of burning paper, stronger than ever before. The mirror hung above the sink, frame embedded in the wall as if it had always belonged there. My reflection stood watching, hands pressed against the glass, smile widening beyond the limitations of a human face. I approached slowly, drawn by something beyond curiosity or fear, something inevitable. My reflection stepped back, creating space, inviting me in. I pressed my hand against the cold surface. The glass yielded like water. Behind me, something stepped out as I stepped in. Now I wait here in this backward world where everything looks almost right, where words read strangely and faces seem subtly wrong. I watch through the glass as something wearing my face lives my life, learning to move without the slight delay that might give it away. Sometimes people look at the mirror and notice me watching. Children especially sense something wrong in my too still posture, my too wide smile. But adults just see their own reflections, adjusted to expectation by whatever rules govern this place. I practice my expressions daily, mimicking the movements of those who pass by this silver frame. Perhaps one day someone will stop and notice something strange in their reflection trees they can't see, a sky that isn't quite right. They'll step closer. And I'll smile first. Story 4, the walls were thin, but I had no neighbors, just woods on the other side. Last night, lying in the dark, I heard it, one knock, then another, then silence. But the third knock came from right behind my bed. The air smelled like old wood, sweat, and something cold like freshly turned stone. I froze, breath caught in my throat. My fingers dug into the cotton sheets as I strained to listen. Nothing followed. Just the sound of my own heartbeat, too loud in my ears. Morning came with merciful sunlight, casting long shadows across my bedroom floor. I convinced myself it had been a branch against the siding, maybe a settling house. Old buildings make sounds, they breathe and creak and moan. This was normal. But that night, as darkness crept in, I found myself staring at that wall. The knock returned once, twice, followed by a silence that seemed to stretch beyond the confines of my room. And then, the third knock, closer somehow, as if whatever made it had moved inward through the plaster. I switched on every light and inspected the wall. My fingertips detected nothing unusual about its surface, just ordinary paint over ordinary drywall. Yet when I pressed my ear against it, I heard something like whispered breathing, rhythmic, patient, waiting. I decided to document whatever was happening. My phone became my evidence collector. I set it to record audio while I slept, positioned my laptop to capture video of the wall. If something was there, I would find it. The recordings showed nothing unusual, but when I played back the audio, I discovered something strange: gaps in the recording. Brief moments of digital silence that shouldn't have been there, as if something had edited the file while I slept. During daylight hours, everything seemed normal again, but each night the pattern repeated: one knock, another knock, silence, then a third knock that seemed to move closer each time. The smell grew stronger too, that mineral coldness mixed with something organic and wrong. I began marking the wall with penciled dots where each knock occurred. What started as random points slowly formed a pattern over several nights, a spiral tightening toward the center of the wall. I took photos each morning, documenting the progression. Friends visited but heard nothing when they stayed. Old houses make noises, they said, echoing my initial rationalization, but they didn't feel the vibration beneath their fingers when touching the wall. They didn't smell that strange scent that now permeated my bedroom. I purchased a stethoscope, pressing it against various points on the wall during the day. nothing unusual until I tried at sunset. That's when I first heard it, a faint scratching sound, like fingernails or small claws moving steadily in circles. The knocks continued their nightly ritual, but now accompanied by that scratching, always moving, always in a spiral pattern that matched my pencil marks. I began leaving notes on the wall. Who are you? What do you want? Each morning the papers remained untouched, but the pencil marks had shifted slightly, forming letters too faint to read. I decided to cut into the wall, just a small hole at first, where the spiral seemed to be centering. I waited until midday when everything felt most normal. The drywall gave way easily under my knife, revealing the expected wooden studs and insulation. Nothing unusual. I patched it before nightfall, placing a small audio recorder inside the wall. That night no knocks came. For the first time in weeks, silence reigned. I slept deeply, almost peacefully, until waking suddenly at what must have been the darkest part of night. The patch on my wall had changed, not torn open, but altered somehow. The texture was wrong. It looked like skin stretched over bone. I didn't touch it, I couldn't, but I watched as it seemed to breathe subtle movements, rising and falling in perfect rhythm with my own breathing. When I held my breath, it held too. When I gasped, it pulsed. The audio recorder, when retrieved the next day using tongs, contained nothing but static except for one clear sound at the very end. My own voice whispering words I had never spoken. I moved to the couch, abandoning my bedroom entirely, but distance provided no relief. Now I heard knocks throughout the house, always in sets of 3, always closer than they should be. The smell followed me, growing stronger near any wall. My documentation became obsessive photographs, recordings, journal entries detailing every occurrence. I mapped the entire house with knock locations, creating a 3-dimensional model that revealed something impossible. All knock points, when connected, led to an exact spot in the center of my bedroom wall. I invited a structural engineer to inspect the house. He found nothing unusual in the bones of the building, nothing that could explain the sounds or the smell. But as he was leaving, he paused at my front door, his hand lingering on the frame. "This wood," he said, tapping the door frame, "it's not right." "What do you mean?" "It's not from around here, very old growth. You don't see timber like this anymore." That night I examined every wooden surface in my house with new eyes. Under strong light, the grain patterns seemed to shift slightly, forming shapes that resembled faces when viewed from the corner of my vision. They disappeared when looked at directly. The knocks changed too, no longer just at night, no longer just 3. They came in complex patterns now, like code or language. I began to recognize sequences, to anticipate them. Sometimes I found myself knocking back, my knuckles moving against surfaces before I realized what I was doing. I started recording myself during sleep again. The footage showed me sleepwalking each night, approaching different walls, pressing my ear against them as if listening. In one recording, my sleeping self smiled, an expression I didn't recognize on my own face. The spiral on my bedroom wall had continued forming even in my absence. Now it covered the entire surface, deep grooves carved into the drywall that couldn't be explained by my pencil marks. At its center, where I had cut my hole, something dark had stained the patch, spreading outward like ink through water. I resolved to break through the wall completely. Whatever was hiding there needed to be exposed. I gathered tools, hammer, crowbar, heavy gloves, and waited until what felt like morning, though heavy clouds made it hard to tell. As the first blow struck the wall, the entire house seemed to inhale. Dust rose not outward but inward, as if being sucked into the wall itself. The smell intensified stone and wood in something like copper. Another strike, plaster cracked along the spiral pattern, following its path rather than breaking naturally. The third blow broke through, revealing not the expected space between walls, but something dark and motionless. I widened the hole with my hands now, tearing at the edges. Behind the wall was another wall made of dark, polished wood that felt warm under my fingers. It was carved with intricate patterns that matched the spiral I had been tracking. At its center was something like a door small, just large enough for a hand to pass through. There was no knob, no handle, just a smooth wooden surface with a small indentation where one might knock. I stood frozen, staring at this impossible architecture hidden within my ordinary walls. The house around me had gone completely silent, a deep, waiting silence that felt alive. My hand moved without conscious direction, forming itself into a fist. I felt my knuckles brush the wooden surface. One knock. The wood seemed to soften under my touch. Another knock. A seam appeared along the edges of the small door, light seeping through from somewhere beyond. I hesitated before the third knock, some part of me still fighting against what was happening. But my body wasn't entirely my own anymore. My fist completed its motion. The third knock. The small door swung inward, revealing not darkness but light brilliant and cold. The smell rushed out, overwhelming now ancient stone, old-growth wood, and fresh blood. My blood. I felt myself being pulled forward, not physically but somewhere deeper, as if the spiral had always been inside me, not just on the wall, as if it had been waiting for me to complete it. As my consciousness stretched toward that light, I understood what the engineer had meant about the wood. This house had never been just a house. The walls had never been just walls. They had been growing all this time, growing inward, growing toward me. Now I live in the space between spaces. I have become the knock that others hear through their walls. I am the spiral that forms in the corners of their vision. Sometimes I find thin places where the barriers weaken, and I can reach through just enough to tap, to remind them that walls work both ways. One knock to wake them, another to guide them, a third to welcome them home. Listen carefully tonight. That sound you hear might not be your house settling after all. Story 5. There used to be a road that led out of my property straight through the fields. But when I woke up this morning, the fields were gone, replaced by trees, hundreds of them, thick, tall, too close together. The air smelled of pine needles, wet bark, and a low, earthy rot. I took a step outside. The trees were still growing. I rubbed my eyes, certain I was still caught in some vivid dream. The soil beneath my bare feet felt damp, almost spongy, nothing like the dry, packed dirt of my front yard. My breath came in short bursts of white vapor despite it being the middle of summer. Something was wrong with the temperature, with the light, with everything. The trees hadn't been there when I went to sleep. I knew that with absolute certainty. My property had been surrounded by open fields for as long as I had lived here, the horizon visible in every direction. Now I could barely see 20 feet before the world disappeared into a tangle of dark trunks and undergrowth. I went back inside and grabbed my phone to call anyone. No signal. The screen showed full battery but no bars. I tried the landline next. The dial tone was there, but it sounded wrong, deeper somehow, with a subtle pulse underneath like a heartbeat. I hung up without completing a call. With trembling hands, I picked up my camera. If nothing else, I needed to document this. The viewfinder showed exactly what my eyes saw, dense forest where fields should be. I snapped several photos, the shutter click unnaturally loud in the stillness. When I reviewed the images, my blood went cold. In the first photo, the trees appeared normal, if impossibly present. In the second, they seemed closer to the house. In the third, one tree, a massive pine with bark like cracked skin, had a knot that resembled an eye. I deleted the photos in a panic and went to the kitchen window. The forest had definitely crept closer. The nearest trees now stood no more than 10 feet from my back door, their branches stretching toward the house like fingers. The smell had intensified to no longer just pine and earth, but something metallic, something like copper or blood. I made coffee, hoping the familiar routine would settle my nerves, but the water from the tap ran dark for several seconds before clearing. The coffee tasted like dirt and ash. I decided to test the boundary of this impossible forest. Pulling on boots and grabbing a walking stick, I stepped outside again and approached the nearest line of trees. The air grew colder with each step, my breath coming in thicker clouds of vapor. Birds should have been singing. Insects should have been buzzing. Instead, the only sound was the soft creak of wood stretching and growing. At the edge of the tree line, I paused. The forest floor was carpeted with a thick layer of moss that seemed to pulse gently, as if breathing. Drops of clear liquid beaded on the surface of the moss, too viscous to be dew. I touched one with my fingertip, and it clung to my skin like sap before slowly absorbing into my fingerprint. My skin tingled where the liquid had touched it, then went numb. I pushed forward between two trees, ducking under low-hanging branches that seemed to dip lower as I passed beneath them. The forest was darker inside than it should have been, the canopy too thick for natural growth. My boots sank deeper into the moss with each step, making wet, sucking sounds as I pulled them free. The deeper I went, the more disoriented I became. I should have been walking in a straight line away from my house, but somehow I kept glimpsing my own roof through gaps in the trees, as if I were walking in circles despite maintaining a straight path. I stopped to mark a tree with my pocket knife, carving a small X into the bark. The tree bled, there's no other word for it. Clear fluid welled up from the cut, then dark into amber, then deep red. I stumbled back, dropping the knife. The wound in the tree pulsed, and the red liquid dripped down to the moss, which absorbed it eagerly. All around me, I could hear the forest responding creaks and groans, and a soft rustling that sounded almost like whispers. I turned to run back to the house, but the path I'd taken had vanished. Where there had been a narrow passage between trees, there was now a wall of trunks so tightly pressed together they might have been growing that way for centuries. Panic rose in my throat as I spun around, looking for any way out. That's when I noticed the patterns in the bark of the surrounding trees, whorls and knots that looked disturbingly like faces, all with eyes closed as if sleeping or waiting. I chose a direction at random and pushed through the undergrowth, branches catching at my clothes and hair. The moss grew thicker, occasionally giving way to patches of small white mushrooms arranged in perfect circles. I avoided stepping in them. After what felt like hours of walking, I emerged into a small clearing. In the center stood my house. Not a copy, not a mirage, but my actual house. Somehow the forest had twisted space itself, bringing me back to where I started despite my having walked steadily away. Only the house looked different now. The white paint had taken on a greenish tinge, and thin vines had begun to creep up the foundation. The windows reflected nothing but darkness, as if the inside had been swallowed by shadow. I approached cautiously, wondering if I had somehow lost my mind. As I reached for the door handle, I noticed tiny mushrooms sprouting from the wood of the porch steps, the same white variety I'd seen in the forest. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except for a fine layer of pollen or spores that dusted every surface. The air felt thick and humid, difficult to breathe. My coffee cup sat on the kitchen counter, now filled with what looked like black soil. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. In the mirror, my reflection looked normal for just a moment before I noticed small, green flecks in my irises that hadn't been there before. My fingertips, where they had touched the moss, now showed fine, vein-like patterns under the skin. I sat down at my desk and began to write everything down, determined to maintain some record of what was happening. As I wrote, I noticed the ink from my pen spreading on the page, forming patterns that resembled roots or branches at the edges of my words. When night fell, the forest came alive with sound, distant knocking like wood striking wood, soft, chittering noises just below my windows, and underneath it all, a low hum that vibrated through the floorboards, up through my feet and into my bones. I didn't sleep, I couldn't. The darkness seemed thicker than normal darkness, pressing against the windows like something solid. The only light came from the strange, faintly luminous fungi that had sprouted in the corners of every room while I wasn't looking. During that endless night, I tried every door and window, only to find that each one opened onto a different part of the forest, never the same view twice. The house had become a nexus of impossible pathways, a hub around which the forest revolved. Morning arrived with a grayish light that didn't seem to come from any particular direction. The forest had crept even closer overnight, branches now scraping against the siding and roof. One large limb had punched through a window in the spare bedroom, allowing a cascade of leaves and tiny, skittering insects to pour inside. I boarded up the broken window as best I could, but the wood I used felt soft and damp, already compromised. The tools in my hands grew increasingly heavy as I worked, my muscles aching with a deep fatigue that seemed to reach into my marrow. When I finally sat down to rest, I noticed dark soil under my fingernails that wouldn't wash away. My veins looked greener beneath my skin, and my heart beat in time with the pulsing I felt through the floor. I tried cutting down one of the trees closest to the house, using an axe from the shed. The metal blade sparked against the bark but left barely a mark. After several swings, the axe head shattered, leaving me holding a useless handle. The forest responded to my attack. All around the house, the trees bent slightly inward, their canopies merging to block out more light. The temperature dropped further, and mist began to rise from the moss-covered ground. I retreated inside and barricaded the doors with furniture that felt increasingly foreign under my hands. The wood of my dining table had developed the same whorl patterns I'd seen on the trees. My leather couch now felt like smooth bark. Something tapped on the roof, gentle at first, then with increasing urgency. I looked up to see the ceiling bulging downward, a water stain spreading in the shape of a dark circle. But when a drop finally fell, hitting my forehead, it wasn't water at all. It was the same clear, viscous fluid from the moss. Where it touched my skin, I felt a moment of sharp pain followed by a strange sense of connection, as if for just a second I could feel every tree in the forest, every root, every leaf. The sensation faded, but left behind a lingering awareness, like phantom limbs extending far beyond my body. I wiped the liquid away and found strands of green beneath the surface of my skin, spreading outward from the point of contact like tiny roots. The forest wanted in, or perhaps it wanted me out into its embrace. Either way, the boundary between us was dissolving. That night I dreamed I was walking in the forest, but I wasn't afraid. The trees parted before me, welcoming me deeper. The moss cushioned my steps, which no longer made sound. In the dream, I came to a clearing much larger than the one surrounding my house. In its center grew a single tree, enormous beyond reason, its trunk wide enough that 100 people holding hands couldn't encircle it. The bark of this ancient tree was covered in faces, not patterns that resembled faces, but actual faces, emerging from the wood as if pushing through from inside. Some had eyes open, watching me. Others remained closed in something like sleep. I approached the tree, my feet moving without my control. As I drew closer, the bark before me split open, revealing a hollow large enough to step into. From inside came a warm, green light and the sound of something breathing. I woke gasping, covered in sweat that smelled of sap. The room around me had changed. Roots had broken through the floorboards, curling around the legs of my bed. The walls were covered in a thin layer of moss that glowed faintly in the darkness. I tried to get up but found my limbs heavy, unresponsive. Looking down, I saw fine tendrils extending from the sheets into my skin, fusing me to the bed. When I finally managed to tear myself free, it felt like ripping open a wound. The mirror showed my transformation progressing. My hair had taken on the texture of fine roots, my skin a subtle greenish pallor. The whites of my eyes had darkened to amber. When I opened my mouth, my tongue was covered in what looked like tiny leaves. I no longer felt hunger or thirst in any human sense, but I craved sunlight with an intensity that frightened me. I found myself pressing against the windows, drawn to even the weak, filtered light that made it through the canopy. The house creaked and shifted around me, wood swelling and contracting like a living thing. Doorways had narrowed, ceilings lowered, the straight lines of human architecture gradually surrendering to organic curves. My camera had filled with moisture, the lens clouded from within. My phone screen displayed only pulsing patterns of green and brown, regardless of which buttons I pressed. Even my handwritten notes had become illegible, the ink spreading and forming images of trees and roots rather than words. I made one final attempt to escape. Taking a kitchen knife, I cut through the vines that had grown across the back door and forced my way outside. The forest had transformed again. The trees now formed a perfect circle around the house, evenly spaced like pillars. Beyond them, I could see only mist and shadows. I chose a gap between two trees and ran toward it. As I passed between them, the air thickened, becoming almost solid. My movements slowed as if I were pushing through deep water. The forest floor beneath me softened, and I began to sink. I struggled, but each movement only pulled me deeper into the hungry moss. It rose to my knees, then my waist, cool and somehow comforting despite my terror. That's when I heard a voice, not in my ears but in my mind. Not words exactly, but intentions, desires, memories far older than human language. The forest was speaking to me, or perhaps through me. It showed me images of what it wanted, what it had always wanted. Not destruction, but transformation. Not an end, but a new kind of beginning. I stopped struggling. The moss released me, allowing me to stand once more. I walked back to the house, each step leaving small mushrooms sprouting in my footprints. Inside, the transformation had accelerated. Walls had given way to living wood, the ceiling opened to a canopy of leaves. My furniture had been absorbed into the floor, becoming natural formations of root and trunk. I sit now at what used to be my desk, though it's now more like the hollow of a massive tree. I'm writing this with sap that flows from my fingertips on bark that peels away in perfect sheets. I don't know who will read it or if anyone will. Perhaps these words are just for the forest itself, a record of its newest acquisition. The merger is almost complete. Soon, there will be no meaningful distinction between house and forest, between me and the growth that surrounds me. I find I don't mind as much as I should. There used to be a road that led out of my property straight through fields, but the fields are gone. And soon, I think, so will I be not ended, but spread thin, consciousness diffused through root and branch, joining the ancient mind that waits at the heart of the forest that came overnight. The trees are still growing, and now so am I. Story 6. No matter how many coats I added, the brownish streaks always returned, twisting downward like long fingers dragging through the drywall. I even replaced the panel once, but the stains bled through again the next morning. The room reeked of primer, old water damage, and something else like iron left to rust in sunlight. I first noticed the discoloration while unpacking boxes in my new home. The previous owners had left the place impeccable, freshly painted walls throughout, new carpeting in the bedrooms, and renovated bathrooms. Everything sparkled with potential and new beginnings. Everything except for that single wall in what would become my home office. Initially, I dismissed it as water damage from a long-repaired leak. The stain was barely visible, then just a faint shadow beneath the eggshell paint. I made a mental note to touch it up before setting up my desk and shelves. But each day, as I continued organizing my belongings, the mark darkened and expanded. By the end of the week, the stain had developed a distinct pattern, 5 vertical streaks running down the wall, each one slightly curved, joined at the top by a horizontal smudge. My rational mind saw random water damage. My imagination saw a hand. Nothing that a fresh coat of paint won't fix, I told myself, speaking aloud to cut through the silence of the empty house. The hardware store clerk recommended their best primer for blocking stains, guaranteed to seal anything beneath. I bought 2 cans and returned home determined. The paint went on thick and white, covering the brownish marks completely. I stood back, admiring my handiwork as the primer dried to a perfect blank canvas. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since moving in. Morning brought disappointment. The stains had returned darker, more defined. Now they truly resembled fingers, the imprint of a hand dragging downward. Most disturbing was how they seemed to have shifted slightly to the right, as if the invisible hand had moved. I applied a second coat, then a third. Each morning the stains reappeared. With each emergence, they grew more detailed. What began as simple streaks now showed ridges like knuckles and whorls resembling fingerprints. My rational explanations faltered. I searched online for persistent stains after primer and found mundane explanations about tannin bleeding and insufficient sealing. Nothing about stains that seemed to move, nothing about marks that grew more detailed over time. I cut away the drywall and replaced it. This wasn't a small undertaking for someone with limited renovation experience, but desperation drove my hands. Behind the wall, I found nothing unusual, no signs of mold, no hidden pipes that might leak, no evidence of anything that could cause such markings. The new drywall went up clean and unmarked. I applied primer immediately, then 2 coats of fresh paint. My shoulders ached from the repetitive motion of rolling paint onto the wall. My back complained from hours hunched in concentration, but satisfaction outweighed discomfort as I viewed the pristine surface. Night fell. I slept poorly, my dreams filled with impressions of hands reaching through surfaces, fingers dragging through solid objects as if they were merely thick liquid. Morning revealed my fears realized. The stains had returned on the brand new drywall. No longer just suggestive of a hand, they now unmistakably formed 5 fingers and a palm pressed flat against the wall from the inside, pushing outward. The paint bulged slightly around each fingertip. I placed my hand against the wall, aligning my fingers with the stain. The mark was larger than my hand, stretched longer, the fingers thinner and cold, so cold it burned my palm. I yanked my hand away, half expecting to see frost on my skin. The coldness lingered, seeping deeper than skin, settling into bone. My fingers throbbed with dull pain for hours afterward. That night I heard tapping, not mechanical tapping like pipes expanding or house frames settling. This sounded deliberate, a rhythm of 5 distinct taps, pausing, then repeating. Tap, 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 pause, tap, 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 tap. The sound came from inside the wall. I placed a glass against the surface, pressing my ear against the bottom as I'd seen detectives do in old movies. The tapping became clearer, more defined. Between taps, I heard something else, a whispering so faint it might have been my imagination, my heating system, or the wind outside. Except it wasn't any of those things. The whisper formed words. I'm still here. Sleep eluded me. When exhaustion finally pulled me under, nightmares followed dreams of being trapped inside the wall, my mouth and nose filled with drywall dust, my lungs burning for air while my fingers clawed desperately outward. I woke gasping, sheets damp with sweat. Dawn light filtered through my blinds. I avoided looking at the wall for as long as possible, busying myself with coffee and breakfast. But eventually I had to know. The handprint remained, but now the fingers had moved. No longer pressed flat, they curled slightly, as if beginning to claw at the surface from within. The paint had cracked around the fingertips, small flakes falling to the baseboard below. I didn't bother with painting over it again. Instead, I built a bookcase tall and wide enough to completely cover that section of wall. The physical labor helped focus my mind away from the whispers that seemed to hover at the edge of my hearing. I positioned the heavy wooden shelves against the wall, securing them tightly. Books filled every available space, creating a solid barrier between me and whatever lay beyond. For several days, normalcy returned. I slept without nightmares. The tapping stopped. No strange smells permeated the room. I began to believe that whatever had caused the phenomenon was now contained, blocked, unable to reach through the barrier I'd created. My mistake was removing a book from the middle shelf. As I slid the hardcover from its place, I noticed a dark smudge on the wall behind it. The stain had traveled through the bookcase, appearing exactly where the spine of the book had been. I pulled more books from their places. Behind each one, a small section of the handprint was visible, connecting like a puzzle across the shelves. The complete image stunned me. The hand was no longer pressed against the wall, it now extended outward, three-dimensional, as if frozen in the act of reaching through. Fingers stretched toward where I stood, palm turned upward in supplication or demand. I approached cautiously, curiosity overwhelming fear. The protrusion wasn't paint or stain at all, but something solid that had pushed through the wall and bookcase. It resembled a hand in shape, but felt like nothing I'd ever touched, not quite flesh, not quite stone. Cold radiated from it, turning my breath visible in the otherwise warm room. The whisper returned, no longer muffled by the wall. Help me come through. I recoiled, knocking books to the floor. The hand remained static, reaching. But as I watched, a subtle movement caught my eye. The index finger curled slightly, beckoning. Panic drove me from the room. I slammed the door, leaning against it as if to prevent something from following. My breathing came in short gasps, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't return to that room for 2 days. When I finally gathered enough courage to open the door, the bookcase had moved. Not drastically, just a few inches away from the wall, as if pushed by gentle pressure from behind. In the narrow gap between bookcase and wall, the hand protruded fully now, wrist and part of a forearm visible. The skin, if it could be called, that had a translucent quality, revealing shadowy structures beneath that approximated bones and tendons, but moved in ways that bones shouldn't move. I should have fled the house entirely. Any rational person would have. Instead, I found myself drawing closer, mesmerized by the impossibility before me. The hand turned slowly toward me, fingers uncurling in invitation. "Who are you?" I whispered. The fingers curled inward, pointing to the wall. Letters formed there, pushed outward like the hand had been, creating raised text in the paint. "I am what lives between spaces. What do you want? To exist, to be remembered." The answer sent shivers through me, not from fear, but from a strange sense of recognition. Hadn't I also moved here seeking existence, seeking to be remembered? Hadn't I also felt trapped, pressed against barriers that seemed impermeable? I reached forward, my fingertips hovering inches from the outstretched hand. The cold intensified, biting at my skin. "If I help you, will you leave afterward?" I asked. The fingers curled slightly, then extended again. Not quite a yes, not quite a no. "I need your promise," I insisted. Letters formed again on the wall. I promised to take only what I need. Something in that phrasing should have warned me, but fascination clouded judgment, curiosity overpowered caution. I pressed my palm against the strange hand. Pain shot through me, sharp, electric, invasive. The cold entity gripped tightly, pulling me forward, not physically moving me, but drawing something from within me outward, extracting essence rather than matter. I tried to pull away, but found myself paralyzed. The sensation of being simultaneously filled and emptied overwhelmed my senses. Through blurring vision, I watched the arm extend further from the wall, gaining solidity and color with each passing moment. As it became more real, I felt myself becoming less substantial. The extraction stopped abruptly. The hand released me, and I collapsed to the floor, weakness permeating every fiber of my being. Above me, now fully emerged from the wall, stood a figure that mirrored my appearance but wasn't quite right, features slightly askew, movements too fluid, eyes reflecting light in ways human eyes shouldn't. It examined its new form, my form, with evident satisfaction, flexing fingers and rolling shoulders experimentally. "Thank you for your contribution," it said in a voice that resembled mine but carried undertones of something ancient and hollow. "I didn't take everything, just enough to manifest. You'll recover partially." The entity moved toward the door, wearing my face, my body, my identity. It paused at the threshold, glancing back. "I'll leave the house as promised, but I'm keeping this form. It suits me." After it departed, I remained on the floor for hours, too weak to stand. Eventually, I crawled to a mirror, needing to see what remained of me. My reflection showed a face partially, their features blurred and faded, edges of my body slightly transparent. I had become a living stain, existing between presence and absence. I still live in this house. I've tried leaving, but something anchors me here now. The wall no longer shows handprints, those were just its method of reaching through. Instead, I'm developing new stains of my own, imprints forming wherever I rest too long against surfaces. Sometimes I catch glimpses of my doppelganger in news articles online or social media posts. It lives my life better than I ever did, more successful, more vibrant, more real. It sends me photos occasionally, a cruel reminder of our transaction. I've started painting the walls again, covering my own spreading stains. But no matter how many coats I apply, they always return by morning, expanding, reaching, telling my story to anyone willing to look closely enough. And sometimes, when new residents tour this house, thinking it vacant, I press my fading hands against surfaces, hoping someone else might notice, hoping someone else might help me come through. Story 7, every night the same patch right beside me stayed freezing cold. Not cool, not chilly, cold like ice. I changed the mattress, moved rooms, even flipped the bed itself. But it returned, always centered, always silent. The air smelled faintly of linen and something sharp, like ammonia or tears. I first noticed it during winter, dismissing it as poor insulation or a draft from the window. Natural explanations seemed logical at first. I added layers, a thermal mattress pad, extra blankets, even sleeping in thermal wear, but nothing helped. The spot remained, defiant against physics and reason. Sleep became fragmented. I would wake to find myself curled at the edge of the bed, as far from the cold spot as possible without falling off. My body instinctively recoiled even in unconsciousness. I started documenting everything in a notebook. Temperature readings showed the spot measured 20 degrees colder than the surrounding mattress. I took photos, though nothing appeared visually different. The camera captured only rumpled sheets, not the invisible anomaly that had begun to consume my thoughts. Friends suggested logical explanations: air conditioning vents, uneven mattress springs, psychological projection. I dismissed none of these possibilities, investigating each with methodical precision. I sealed vents, replaced the mattress again, even consulted a therapist who prescribed medication for anxiety-induced sensory disturbances. Nothing changed. The cold intensified, spreading gradually. What began as a dinner plate-sized circle grew to encompass nearly half the bed. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. During waking hours, my mind wandered to the mystery waiting at home. During night, I found myself conducting experiments rather than resting. I began recording audio while I slept. The first recordings revealed nothing beyond my own restless movements and occasional murmurs. On the 7th night, something changed. Beneath the white noise of the room, barely audible even at maximum volume, I detected what sounded like breathing, not my own irregular sleep breathing, but something measured, deliberate, and eerily calm. I needed validation. Asking someone else to feel the cold spot would either confirm my sanity or force me to confront a troubling psychological reality. My neighbor agreed to help, a practical woman with no patience for superstition. She placed her hand on the mattress, moving it methodically across the surface. "Nothing," she said, shrugging. "Maybe a little cooler here, but that's normal. Beds have temperature variations." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by doubt. I pressed my own hand to the spot, the familiar. Biting cold greeted me, so intense it nearly burned. My neighbor watched with growing concern as I yanked my hand away, nursing fingers that had gone white with cold. "There's nothing there," she repeated, gentler this time. "Maybe you should talk to someone." That night, I set up a camera to record the bed while I slept. Reviewing the footage the next morning, I noticed something disturbing. The bed depressed slightly on the side opposite from where I slept, as if bearing an invisible weight. The depression moved subtly throughout the night, inch by inch, toward my sleeping form. I deleted the video immediately, some primal instinct overwhelming my scientific curiosity. That evening, I dragged a chair into my living room and slept sitting upright, away from the bed and its growing cold spot. Morning found me back in bed with no memory of how I had returned there. The cold spot pressed against my back, no longer a patch but a presence that spooned me from behind. I lay paralyzed, feeling the cold seep through my pajamas, spreading across my skin like frost on a window pane. I moved out that day, abandoning most of my possessions in a frantic exodus. The new apartment felt sterile and unfamiliar, but blessedly warm, normal. I spent extra on a new mattress, top of the line, with a 10-year warranty against defects. The first night passed without incident, so did the second. By the third week, I had begun to relax, to believe that whatever haunted my sleep had been left behind with the old mattress. Then came the familiar sensation, a small circle of cold forming beside me as I read before bed. I pressed my hand against it, finding the same biting chill that had followed me across the distance. My heart raced as I pulled back the covers, revealing nothing but pristine sheets. This time something had changed. As my fingers brushed against the cold, I felt something brush back the lightest touch, like fingertips grazing mine. I recoiled, but not before noticing the cold spot had shifted slightly, as if in response to my movement. That night I forced myself to stay awake, sitting upright against the headboard. The cold spot remained beside me, patient and unwavering. Near dawn, exhaustion overcame my resolve. As consciousness slipped away, I felt the mattress shift, the cold spot pressing closer, molding against my side like a lover seeking warmth. Dreams came in fragments, whispered conversations I could almost understand, a face just beyond recognition, hands pulling me deeper into the mattress itself. I woke gasping, sheets twisted around my legs, the room filled with the sharp ammonia smell, stronger now, mixed with something else, earth and decay. The notebook became my anchor to reality. I documented everything, filling pages with observations, theories, and increasingly desperate questions. The handwriting on the later pages grew jagged, reflecting my deteriorating mental state. One night, I left the notebook open beside me as I fought to stay awake. Morning revealed new writing on the page, not my handwriting, but something childlike and unsteady. A single word repeated down the margin of the page. Mine, 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 mine. I should have run then. Anyone rational would have fled, seeking help or at least distance. Instead, curiosity overpowered fear. I placed the notebook open on the bed that night, pen beside it, and forced myself to sleep. The response came not in words, but in drawings, crude sketches of two figures lying side by side in a bed. One clearly represented me. The other was a mass of scribbles, dark and formless except for what might have been a face, rendered with such pressure that the pen had torn through several pages. Communication, however twisted, changed everything. I began leaving questions written in the notebook. Who are you? No answer came, only more drawings of the two figures, progressively closer together on the page. What do you want? The next drawing showed the figures merged, indistinguishable from each other. I stopped writing in the notebook after that. The cold spot expanded until it encompassed the entire bed, forcing me to sleep on the couch. Even there, I would wake to find a small circle of cold forming beside me, growing throughout the night. Exhaustion became my constant companion. Dark circles formed under my eyes, my skin grew pale, appetite vanished. Colleagues commented on my appearance, their concern evident but helpless against the truth I couldn't share. One night, delirious from lack of sleep, I made a decision. I returned to the bed, lay down directly in the center of the cold, and spoke aloud to the empty room. "Take what you want, just let me sleep." The cold enveloped me immediately, not in patches, but as a complete cocoon. My body temperature plummeted until shivering became impossible. Numbness spread from my extremities inward, a merciful anesthesia preceding what I assumed would be the end. As consciousness faded, I felt arms wrapping around me, pulling me close, not threatening but possessive, claiming. The ammonia smell mixed with something sweeter now, like flowers preserved too long. A voice whispered against the back of my neck, the words unclear but the intent unmistakable. "Mine." I didn't die that night, though perhaps something just as profound occurred. The cold remains constant now, not just in bed but everywhere. My skin never warms, not in hot showers or under summer sun. People flinch when they shake my hand, noting the unnatural chill. I've grown accustomed to wearing layers even indoors. The voice continues whispering, clearer now. A constant companion sharing thoughts and observations throughout my day. We sleep together, this invisible presence and I, locked in an embrace that crosses boundaries I once considered impermeable. And sometimes, catching my reflection in windows or mirrors, I notice a shadow that doesn't match my movements, a dark silhouette standing just behind my shoulder, watching with patient, possessive eyes. I've stopped flinching at the sight. We've reached an understanding, this entity and I. The notebook sits on my nightstand, half filled with my notes and questions. The other half contains responses in that childish scrawl, becoming more articulate with each passing night. Sometimes I wake to find myself writing in it, thoughts that aren't my own flowing through fingers that respond to another will. My body temperature continues dropping. Doctors express concern, run tests, find no physiological cause for the hypothermia slowly claiming me. I've stopped seeking medical help. What medicine exists for my condition? At night, as the presence wraps around me and whispers of a coming transformation, I wonder what I'll become when the cold finally reaches my core. Will I disappear entirely, replaced by the entity that's claimed me? Or will we merge completely, becoming something neither fully human nor fully other? I write this as warning, though I no longer fear what happens next. The cold spot grows within me now, expanding from the inside out. Soon, I think, I'll be the one leaving frost on everything I touch, the one whispering to some new occupant of a warm bed. Check your mattress tonight. If you find a cold spot forming even a small one, don't investigate. Don't document. Don't communicate. Run. Story 8. I was scrubbing the floor when I saw it hidden in the pattern of the tiles, barely there at first. Eyes, a nose, a wide, knowing grin. The more I stared, the clearer it became. And then it changed. The mouth opened just a little. The air smelled like bleach, soap, and something behind the wall that had been sealed for years. At first, I convinced myself it was nothing, just pareidolia, my brain finding patterns where none existed. I ran my hand over the ceramic surface, feeling its cool, smooth texture beneath my fingertips. Nothing unusual, just an ordinary white tile with gray marbling. I returned to my scrubbing, pushing the strange image from my mind. But as I moved to clean the next section, my eyes kept drifting back. The face seemed more pronounced now, its features sharpening with every glance. What had been a vague suggestion of humanity now held definite contours: high cheekbones, deep-set eyes, that peculiar smile curving upward at one corner. "This is ridiculous," I muttered, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the empty bathroom. I splashed more cleaning solution onto the tiles and scrubbed with renewed vigor, as if I could erase the face through sheer effort. My knuckles whitened around the brush handle. The face remained. I took photos with my phone, thinking perhaps the camera would reveal the truth that there was no face at all, just random swirls in the tile's pattern. But in each picture the face appeared, somehow clearer than when viewed with my naked eye. In the third photo, I could swear the expression had changed, the smile widening ever so slightly. That night sleep eluded me. My mind kept returning to the bathroom floor, to that knowing smile. During my midnight wandering, I found myself standing before the bathroom door, my hand hesitating on the knob. A chill ran up my spine, raising goosebumps along my arms despite the warmth of the house. Something told me not to enter, not in darkness, but curiosity overrode my fear. I flicked on the light. The bathroom appeared normal: white walls, chrome fixtures gleaming in the harsh fluorescent lighting. My gaze dropped to the floor. The face had moved. What had been centered in the tile near the sink now occupied a tile closer to the door. Same features, same smile, but now the eyes seemed to look directly at me, whereas before they had gazed slightly to the left. My breath caught in my throat. I backed away, bumping into the hallway wall. This wasn't possible. Tiles don't change, faces don't move. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream. Lack of sleep, stress from work, an overactive imagination. There were plenty of logical explanations. I even laughed at myself as I prepared for my shower. But when I entered the bathroom, the face was there again, in yet another tile, watching me. I knelt down, examining it closely. The marbling in this tile created a perfect face, too perfect to be coincidence. As I stared, a drop of water fell from the leaky faucet behind me, landing with a soft plink. In that instant, I swear the face blinked. I recoiled, scrambling backward until my back hit the tub. The bathroom suddenly felt colder, the air heavier, pressing against my skin. That smell returned: bleach and soap, yes, but underneath, something musty and ancient, like disturbed earth or old bones. I decided to document everything. I bought a journal and began recording my observations, taking daily photographs, noting any changes. At first, it was just the face appearing in different tiles, always with that same knowing expression. But then, other things began happening. Objects in the bathroom moved when I wasn't looking. The hand towel would be perfectly straight when I entered, then hanging askew moments later without me touching it. The shower curtain would sway gently with no draft. The water in the sink basin would ripple as if disturbed by an unseen finger. And all the while, that face watched me from the floor. I tried replacing the tile. I spent an entire afternoon chipping away at the grout, prying up the offending square of ceramic. Underneath was nothing but concrete and old adhesive, exactly as expected. I installed a new tile, solid white with no marbling. I felt triumphant, powerful. I had defeated whatever strangeness had invaded my home. My victory was short-lived. By morning, the new tile had acquired a swirling pattern, and by evening the face had returned, its smile now seeming almost mocking. I began avoiding the bathroom, using facilities at work or the coffee shop down the street, but avoidance proved impossible. Each night I found myself drawn to that door, compelled to enter and confront the face in the tile. During one such midnight encounter, I noticed something new. The grout lines surrounding the tile with the face had darkened, now forming what appeared to be text, tiny, cramped writing that I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. I leaned closer, my nose nearly touching the floor. The writing moved, rearranging itself before my eyes. A message formed, "Let me in." My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled backward, slamming the door shut behind me. For the remainder of the night, I huddled in my bed, lights blazing, too terrified to close my eyes. When morning came, I returned with trepidation. The writing was gone, the grout lines normal again. But the face remained, now occupying multiple tiles, its features fragmented across the floor like a broken mosaic. I invited a friend over, seeking validation. "Do you see anything strange about the bathroom floor?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She glanced down, shrugged. "Nice tiles, very clean. Nothing unusual in the pattern, no shapes or images." Another shrug, "Just marble, why?" I said nothing more, but when she left, I caught her giving me a concerned look. I wondered what she saw in my face, fear, madness, perhaps both. That night I dreamed of the bathroom. In my dream, the tiles were liquid, rippling like disturbed water. The face rose from the floor, features assembling in 3 dimensions, first a nose, then eyes, finally that terrible smile. It emerged fully, a head made of marble hovering in the air. "I've been waiting," it said, its voice like stone grinding against stone. I woke gasping, sheets tangled around my legs, sweat soaking my night clothes. The next day I noticed moisture seeping up between the tiles, forming small beads that collected and ran in rivulets across the floor. I touched one drop. It was warm, not cold as water should be. When I brought my finger to my nose, the liquid smelled metallic, coppery. Blood. I scrubbed frantically, erasing all traces of the red liquid. But as soon as I finished, fresh beads appeared, welling up from between the tiles like tears. My research became obsessive. I tore up more tiles, finding nothing unusual beneath. I researched the history of my home, learning that it had been built on ordinary land with no tragic past. I consulted architects, tile specialists, even a paranormal investigator who smiled politely and suggested I seek medical help. Nobody believed me. Nobody saw what I saw. Meanwhile, the face continued its transformation. Its features stretched across more tiles, now covering almost half the bathroom floor. The eyes followed me wherever I moved. The mouth sometimes opened, as if speaking words I couldn't hear. I tried covering the floor with a rug, but by morning the rug had been moved, folded neatly against the wall. I tried painting over the tiles, but the paint peeled away in curling strips, revealing the face beneath, unchanged. One night, driven by desperation and lack of sleep, I took a hammer to the floor, smashing tile after tile, creating a crater in my bathroom floor. Dust filled the air, ceramic shards flew in all directions, some cutting my arms and face. I didn't stop until I reached the subfloor, destroying everything in between. Breathing heavily, covered in sweat and blood from minor cuts, I surveyed my work. The face was gone, obliterated along with the tiles that had housed it. My relief was profound but brief. As I watched, the dust in the air began to swirl, collecting into a vague humanoid shape hovering above the destroyed floor. Features formed in the cloud, those same eyes, that same nose, that same knowing smile. "Breaking things won't help," a voice whispered, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "I'm not in the tiles, I never was." The dust dispersed, settling back onto the ruined floor. In the debris, the tiles rearranged themselves, shards connecting to shards, cracks healing before my eyes until the floor was whole again, pristine white tiles with gray marbling. And in the center, the face, now complete across 9 tiles, its smile wider than ever. That night I slept in my car, unable to remain in the house. When morning came, I returned only to pack essential belongings. As I passed the bathroom door, now closed, I heard a soft tapping from inside, like fingernails against tile. I left that day and never returned. I moved far away to a small apartment with linoleum floors in every room. No tiles, no marble, no faces. But sometimes when I'm washing dishes or taking a shower, I notice patterns forming in the water as it swirls down the drain. Eyes, a nose, a wide, knowing grin. And I wonder if it ever really was the tile at all, or if it was something inside me all along, something trying to surface, something with a face like mine but not quite mine, wearing that terrible, knowing smile. Something that's still waiting to be let in. Story 9, I was reaching for a carton of milk when I saw them. Same hair, same jacket, same scar under the chin. Their cart was filled with the same things I had bought the day before. The air around us felt wrong, like the hum of the refrigerator units had cut out. They turned to face me and smiled like they knew I wouldn't speak first. My hand trembled midair, the carton of milk forgotten. A feeling of wrongness crawled up my spine, something primal urging me to run, but I couldn't move. The fluorescent lights seemed to dim around us, creating a pocket of silence in the otherwise busy store. No one else appeared to notice what was happening. "Hello," they said, and their voice was mine, the exact pitch and cadence I heard on my own recordings. A perfect match, too perfect. I managed a nod, my throat constricted with fear. "Do I know you?" The words came out strangled, barely above a whisper. Their smile widened, showing teeth aligned exactly like mine, down to the slightly crooked incisor on the left side. "We know each other very well," they replied, reaching for the same carton of milk I had been about to take, better than anyone else possibly could. I noticed their hand, the same small burn scar on the knuckle from when I was a child, the same bitten fingernails, the same freckle pattern. The logical part of my brain searched for explanations, a long-lost twin, an elaborate prank, a look-alike contest winner, but deep down I knew none of these answers would suffice. This was something else entirely. "What do you want?" I asked, finding my voice at last. "The same things you want," they replied, leaning in slightly. The scent coming off them was my own shampoo, my own deodorant, the promotion at work, the apartment with the bay window, that person you've been too shy to ask out. I want it all. My shopping list, my private ambitions, things I had never told anyone. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice a harsh whisper. "I'm you," they answered simply, "the better version." A cold, heavy dread settled in my stomach. Around us, shoppers pushed carts and selected items from shelves, oblivious to what was happening. I desperately wanted someone to interrupt us, to break the strange spell that had descended, but everyone seemed to give our aisle a wide berth, as if subconsciously avoiding the wrongness emanating from our encounter. "This isn't possible," I said, half to myself. "And yet," they gestured to themselves, "here I am." I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and aimed the camera at them. Through the screen, they appeared blurred, as if the camera couldn't quite focus on their features. When I snapped a picture and checked it, the image showed only an empty space where they had been standing. They laughed my laugh and placed the milk carton in their cart. That won't work, nothing will. I felt sick. The store seemed to warp around me, the aisles stretching longer, the ceiling higher. What are you going to do? Live, they said simply. Take what's rightfully mine, what should have been mine all along. I noticed for the first time that their clothes weren't just similar to mine, they were exactly the same, down to the coffee stain on the left cuff of the jacket sleeve I had gotten that morning. Their wallet peeked from their pocket, my wallet, with the corner worn in the distinctive way mine was. You can't just take my life, I said, trying to sound firm despite the growing panic in my chest. I already have, they replied. Check your pockets. My hands plunged into my jacket, finding them empty. No keys, no wallet, no phone, but I had just been holding my phone, hadn't I? I looked down at my hands, now empty. Where is everything? They finished my question, pulling out my phone, my actual phone with the crack in the corner of the screen and the photo of my dog as the background. Right here, where they belong. A store employee walked past, nodding at them. Finding everything okay, sir? He asked my double. Yes, thank you, my duplicate replied with my voice, my smile, my mannerisms. The employee glanced at me with mild confusion, a flicker of concern crossing his face before he moved on. In that moment, I realized with a sickening clarity that he had seen something wrong about me, not about the imposter. What's happening? My voice sounded different now, somehow less substantial. Reality is making a correction, they said, lining in. You were never supposed to be here. I was. I reached out to grab them, to shake them, to prove to myself they were real, but my hand passed through their arm like smoke. I stared at my fingers, now slightly translucent in the harsh store lighting. No, I whispered, looking down at myself. My feet were still there, but somehow less defined, as if I were viewing them through frosted glass. This isn't right. It's exactly right, they said, and for a second their face shifted, becoming more solid, more real, while I felt myself becoming less so. You were the placeholder, the rough draft. I'm the final version. A woman pushed her cart through the space where I was standing, never acknowledging me, never stopping. I felt nothing as she passed through me. Help, I shouted to the store at large. No one turned, no one reacted. Someone help me. My double watched, their expression almost pitying. They can't hear you anymore, you're fading. I ran to another shopper, waving my increasingly transparent hands in front of their face. Nothing, no reaction. I tried to grab a can from a shelf, but my fingers couldn't make contact. What's happening to me? I asked, returning to my double, who was now examining a bunch of bananas, the exact ripeness I always preferred. You're returning to where you came from, they said quietly. The in-between, the place of almost ideas and nearly people. I don't understand. You don't need to, they checked their watch, my watch. I have to get going. I have that meeting with the boss this afternoon, the one where I'll ask for the promotion. That's my meeting, I said desperately. My life. Not anymore, their voice was final, matter of fact. It was never truly yours. They pushed their cart filled with my favorite foods, my weekly staples, toward the checkout lane. I tried to follow, but my legs felt heavy, as if I were wading through thick mud. The store lights flickered again, and for a brief moment, I saw the world differently, gray and formless, with shapes that weren't quite people moving through spaces that weren't quite rooms. Then the normal world returned, but dimmer now, less substantial. I could still see my double checking out, chatting pleasantly with the cashier who knew me by name. I could hear snatches of their conversation, watch as they paid with my credit card, see them accept the receipt with a smile. I followed them to the parking lot, moving through people and objects like a ghost. They loaded the groceries into my car, got into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirror and looked directly at me, standing behind the car. For a moment our eyes met in the reflection, and I saw something ancient and hungry in their gaze. Then they smiled, started the engine, and drove away. I stood in the parking lot, watching my car, my life, disappear down the road. A cold wind blew through me, and I looked down to see the asphalt visible through my feet. My hands were barely outlines now, my body becoming transparent. In desperation, I ran after a man walking to his car. "Please," I begged, "can you see me? Can anyone see me?" He walked on, keys jingling in his hand, whistling softly. I sank to my knees in the middle of the lot, cars passing through me as if I were nothing but air, which I realized with mounting horror was exactly what I was becoming. The world around me grew fainter, less distinct, while snippets of somewhere else began to intrude, a grayish void populated by half-formed figures, all of them drifting aimlessly, all of them with my face, my build, slightly different versions of me that had never quite made it to reality. I realized then what had happened, what was still happening. I wasn't the original being replaced. I was just another draft, another attempt, another version that hadn't quite worked out. And now I was being called back while a better version took my place. As the solid world faded around me, giving way to the formless gray, I wondered how many times this had happened before. How many versions of me had lived my life for a while, believing themselves real and unique, only to be replaced when a better iteration came along. And I wondered, with the last of my fading consciousness, how long the current version would last before they, too, saw their replacement reaching for a carton of milk in a grocery store, wearing their face and their clothes, ready to take everything they thought was theirs. The gray enveloped me completely, and I became just another shadow drifting in the void, watching the solid world through an ever-thickening veil, waiting for my chance to become real again. Story 10. As the autumn fog gently enveloped the park, it draped everything in a soft veil of gray silk. The leaves, weary from their dance in the damp evening air, settled lazily on the ground. Walking along the gravel path, I savored the earthy scent mingled with the discreet crunch of my footsteps. The street lamps cast diffused halos in the mist, barely illuminating the path ahead. It was in this ethereal setting that I encountered it, a dark coat, neatly folded on a weathered wooden bench. The park was deserted at that late hour, and the coat appeared to have been placed with meticulous care, as if by deliberate hands. Approaching slowly, I noticed the wool fabric absorbing the moist air, still warm to the touch as if recently shed. This detail stirred a shiver within me, not of fear but of intrigue. I inspected the pockets, hoping for a clue to the owner's identity, yet they held only a solitary bus ticket from 1985. Time seemed to pause as I examined this relic from another era, its yellowed paper strangely preserved. Seating myself beside the coat, I allowed my mind to wander as the fog thickened around me. A subtle aroma of lavender and pipe tobacco emanated from the coat, conjuring memories of days long past, of faded photographs in black and white. Upon closer inspection, I discovered faded initials, JM, delicately embroidered in golden thread inside the coat, a nearly vanished remnant of its history. The park's silence was broken by a distant melody, old music drifting as if from a bygone era, perhaps carried by a phantom gramophone. Rising from the bench, I sought the source of the music, but it seemed to emanate from all directions and none. When I turned back to the coat, I noticed a slight shift in its position, as if it had been moved while I was distracted by the haunting melody. The fold was no longer perfect, and a button caught the light in a different way, yet the park remained deserted. Time seemed to stretch and distort, the fog tightening its embrace as shadows danced beneath the flickering streetlights. The music waned, growing fainter, as I pondered the enigma of JM and the purpose behind leaving the coat on that bench. Was JM a professor seeking solace, a musician in search of inspiration, or a soul releasing a fragment of their past? Lost in contemplation, a gentle touch grazed my shoulder, like a whisper from the wind. Startled, I turned, but the fog swirled around me, revealing nothing. The coat now appeared aged, as if time had accelerated solely for it, wearing the fabric and fading its color further. Respecting the mystery of its presence, I chose to leave it undisturbed. Walking away, the music briefly crescendoed, a waltz unfamiliar yet oddly familiar. The next morning, driven by curiosity, I returned to the park. The bench stood empty, but the dew-kissed wood bore the perfect outline where the coat had rested. Beside it lay a new bus ticket, dated for the present day. Even now, on misty evenings passing by that bench, I swear I catch echoes of that distant melody and catch whiffs of lavender and tobacco. At times, amidst the streetlights' dance with the fog, I glimpse the silhouette of an elegant figure strolling away in the park. Yet upon closer inspection, all I find are the shadows of leaves twirling in the evening breeze. Story 11. Night draped the house in a hushed embrace as the wind murmured softly through the leaves of the ancient tree in the garden. Nestled in the armchair of my bedroom, I observed the shadows waltzing on the walls in the flickering lamplight. It was the time when slumber beckoned, yet a peculiar resistance lingered within me. Night after night, a recurring dream had woven its intricate threads into my mind, refusing to release its grip. The room's warmth and the steady cadence of the old pendulum clock coaxed me gently. My gaze drifted to the open diary on the desk, where every detail of that haunting dream had been meticulously transcribed. Each page bore witness to the same enigmatic sequence, a spiral staircase of gray stone spiraling into the depths, the distant echo of water droplets, and a massive wooden door adorned with cryptic symbols. As I traced the familiar words with my fingertips, a subtle realization dawned upon me. In each iteration of the dream, a gradual chill descended with every step I took down the staircase. The cold touch of the stone, the mist of my breath hanging in the air, it all felt eerily real. Yet what truly set this dream apart was the inexplicable sense of belonging that accompanied me, as if the staircase led to a realm I knew intimately, though never traversed in waking life. The closed door at the staircase's base held its secrets tightly, but night after night I inched closer to deciphering the shifting symbols etched upon it. Fluid shapes that seemed to dance and sway beneath my touch, as if imbued with a life force of their own. In the dream, my fingertips traced the intricate patterns, eliciting a faint vibration that reverberated through the very core of the wood, as though the door itself drew breath. That particular evening, as bedtime approached, a curious addition caught my eye in the room. Nestled beside the lamp on the nightstand lay an ancient bronze key, its ornate engraving strangely reminiscent of the symbols on the dream door. Picking it up, I felt the weight of its history and the chill it exuded. Its presence felt both foreign and yet intimately intertwined with my existence, as if it had always been a silent companion. Settling into bed, I clutched the key in my palm, its solidity a grounding reminder of reality amidst the realm of dreams. As sleep beckoned, a subtle certainty whispered that this night held something different. The dream unfolded as before, the spiral staircase, the haunting drip of water, the descending chill. But this time, as I stood before the door, the key in my grasp pulsed faintly, harmonizing with the engraved symbols. Bringing the key to the lock, I discovered for the first time a hidden mechanism nestled among the intricate carvings. With a steady hand and a heart echoing a timeless rhythm, I inserted the key. The mechanism yielded with a melodic whisper, akin to an ancient tune long forgotten. The door swung open slowly, revealing not another chamber, but a mirror reflecting the staircase behind me. Yet in the mirrored world, the steps ascended instead of descended. Awakening in the soft embrace of dawn's light filtering through the curtains, the key remained in my hand, now imbued with a warmth that felt almost alive. On the open diary, a new page awaited, inscribed with characters akin to the symbols on the dream door, shifting and morphing like ripples on an ink-black sea. Since that fateful night, the dream has not revisited me. The key rests upon the nightstand, its faint vibrations occasionally brushing against the silence of the night. I often ponder the mystery of what awaits at the apex of that mirrored staircase, and whether one day courage will guide my steps upward. For now I find solace in watching the symbols within the diary, a silent dance unfolding in the shadowed hours of the night, spinning a tale that perhaps I have yet to grasp. Story 12. The soft November rain tapped gently against the windows of Grandma Rose's attic, creating a soothing melody that always brought me a sense of tranquility. It had been years since I last set foot in this space, now tasked with sorting through Grandma's belongings after her passing. The fragrance of aged wood and weathered books lingered in the air, while the twilight light peeked through the partially closed shutters, casting playful shadows on the vintage wallpaper. Tucked away in a corner beneath a thin layer of dust, I stumbled upon Grandma's cherished brass record player, gleaming like a polished mirror. An artifact from another era, adorned with intricate floral patterns on its mechanical arm and a turntable that seemed frozen in time. Beside it lay a collection of vinyl records, snugly nestled in worn cardboard sleeves that bore the marks of time's passage. As I sifted through the records, my fingers halted on one in particular. Its cover was a blank canvas of pure white, devoid of any title or artist's name, save for a delicate golden border that shimmered in the dim light. I couldn't recall ever seeing this record before, despite my intimate knowledge of Grandma Rose's entire collection. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, I resolved to play it. The record player sprang to life with a familiar, comforting hum. Carefully, I positioned the record on the turntable and lowered the arm. Initially, there was only the expected crackle of vinyl, then the music unfurled. A melody I had never encountered before, a waltz performed on a piano, yet there was an inexplicable quality to the way the notes intertwined. It felt as though the music subtly shifted with each revolution of the record, rearranging itself into fresh harmonies. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the enigmatic composition. Fragrances seemed to waft through the air, the scent of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved flower, though it was the heart of winter. When I opened my eyes once more, the room's shadows moved in an unusual manner, no longer following the natural path of twilight, but swaying to the rhythm of that mysterious melody. Before me on the wall, a figure's shadow danced distinctly, despite my solitude. The waltz persisted, and within the piano notes I detected a familiar sound, Grandma Rose's laughter, as clear as if she were in the room. A frisson of emotion coursed through me, a blend of nostalgia and awe. Rising from the armchair, I approached the window. In its reflection, I glimpsed the room behind me, and fleetingly Grandma Rose appeared youthful, radiant in her favorite dancing attire, twirling in the heart of the attic. Yet when I turned around, she had vanished. The record spun on, reaching its conclusion. As the final note faded into silence, the atmosphere seemed altered. The room felt warmer, more vibrant, as if that fleeting musical moment had awakened dormant memories within the very walls. That night, as I returned the enigmatic record to its white sleeve, a detail caught my eye. Along the inner edge, inscribed in Grandma Rose's elegant script, was a date, her wedding day. Beneath it, in nearly imperceptible letters, a message read, "Music is the key to our most precious memories." Since that day, whenever I revisit the attic, I search for that particular record. Sometimes it reveals itself readily, while other times it seems to play a game of concealment among the other vinyls. Each time I listen, the melody bears slight alterations, as if holding infinite variations of a single memory. I've pondered whether it was a special gift for Grandma Rose or something more mystical. Yet one thing remains certain. On those rainy evenings when the record player spins that enigmatic tune, the attic brims with a subtle magic. For a brief span, the boundary between past and present, reality and memory, thins like the fragile paper of an aged photograph. Perhaps in those fleeting moments, Grandma Rose dances anew perennially young, perennially content in an eternal waltz. Story 13, the night was an embrace of tranquility as the sea lay still, a mirror reflecting the full moon's gentle glow. Wrapped in a cozy wool blanket, I sat on the creaking porch of my wooden abode, listening to the soft melody of waves caressing the shore. The silver path cast by the moon on the water seemed to beckon me, a mysterious invitation to follow it into the unknown horizon. Amidst this serene contemplation, a peculiar sight captured my attention. A luminous green glow, almost ethereal, swaying amidst the waves near the shoreline. Rising slowly from my rocking chair, the salty breeze kissed my face as I descended the weathered steps. The warm sand welcomed my bare feet, a comforting touch despite the lateness of the hour. Approaching the water's edge, where the gentle tide met the earth, the greenish glow revealed itself as an ancient glass bottle, its elegant form holding a weathered piece of yellowed paper. Carefully lifting the weighty bottle, its opaque surface adorned with a salt patina, I marveled at the hypnotic reflections of moonlight dancing through the glass. The cork stopper, sealed with cracked black wax, remained intact despite the passage of time. Tiny crystals within the glass sparkled like celestial bodies, captivating my gaze. Returning to the porch, the soft light of an oil lamp illuminated my discovery as I placed the bottle on the aged wooden table and settled into my favorite armchair. As the sea's symphony grew more pronounced, a whisper carried on the breeze, I began the delicate task of unraveling the sealing wax. Fragile as ancient ash, the seal crumbled under my touch, revealing a remarkably preserved cork stopper. Removing it released a peculiar fragrance, a blend of seaweed, aged ink, and a hint of something indefinable. Within the bottle, a rolled piece of paper tied with a faded blue silk ribbon awaited. Untying the knot, my hands trembled slightly as I unfurled the resilient paper, its sepia-toned ink lending an air of antiquity. The script, elegant yet distorted in places, seemed to convey a message in a language just beyond comprehension. Amid sketches of unknown constellations and lunar phases, a perfect spiral at the page's bottom drew me in with its imperceptible movement. The oil lamp flickered oddly, casting shifting shadows on the porch as the sea's chant transformed into a forgotten melody. Time itself seemed to slow, thickening the air around me. Within the clearest portion of the message, phrases spoke of a realm where dreams intertwined with reality, where time flowed fluidly like water through fingers. The ink, almost alive in its preservation, conveyed a sense of urgency as it revealed that those who read these words were chosen, part of something beyond comprehension. Looking up from the message, the moon's presence intensified, casting a geometric luminescence upon the water's surface. The once dormant bottle on the table now pulsed with a rhythmic glow, akin to a slumbering heartbeat. Carefully folding the message and returning it to its vessel, I left the cork aside. Gazing out at the horizon, pondering the existence of others who may have encountered similar messages, I felt a shift within me. The night unfolded in silence, the stars casting their reflections upon the sea as if whispering ancient truths. The bottle, its green luminescence dwindling with the approaching dawn, stood as a testament to a night that had changed me. The mysteries lingering in the depths of the ocean beckoned, their allure a reminder of a night filled with enigmatic revelations. And so, under the watchful eye of the full moon, I remained on the porch until daybreak, the sea murmuring its timeless secrets. The green glow of the bottle waned, but the essence of that night remained, a whisper of the unknown lingering in the depths of my soul. Story 14. In the dim glow of a flickering candle, shadows danced upon the ancient stone walls as I descended into the depths of the cellar. Each step I took echoed with the familiar creak of the wooden stairs, a sound that had been my companion on countless journeys to retrieve Grandma's preserves. The air was heavy with the cool, musty scent of earth and aged wood, transporting me back to the days of my youth. On this particular evening, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught my attention. The candle flame flickered unnaturally, unaffected by any stray drafts. A fine layer of dust blanketed surfaces that I had sworn were clean just the day before. The shadows seemed to elongate, reaching out towards the darkness that awaited at the bottom of the staircase. Midway down the stairs, a peculiar sensation washed over me, halting my descent. The wooden shelves, which typically ended within a few yards, now appeared to stretch infinitely into the depths. The feeble candlelight failed to illuminate their far ends, creating an illusion of an elongating corridor before my very eyes. The silence enveloped me, broken only by the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat and the distant drip of water seeping through the stones. Driven by a curiosity that eclipsed my fear, I pressed on. The jars of preserves, usually gleaming in the candle's glow, bore labels with increasingly ancient dates as I ventured deeper. 1980, 1960, 1940. Some labels were so faded that they were illegible. As I progressed, the chill in the air intensified, mingling with a mustiness reminiscent of old parchments. The shelves continued to stretch into the abyss, revealing walls adorned with intricate patterns of ancient bricks. Mystical symbols, unfamiliar to my eyes, were meticulously carved into the stone, defying the era in which the house was constructed. Coming to a halt before a peculiar shelf, my gaze fixated on a jar unlike the rest. Crafted from obsidian glass that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it, the jar bore a label that defied reason, 1820. Trembling slightly, I lifted the jar for closer inspection. In the cellar's hush, a faint whisper, devoid of words, brushed against my ears like the ethereal passage of time itself. Turning slowly, a blurred apparition flickered at the edge of my vision, as if distant memories sought to materialize. Sensing it was time to retreat, I pivoted towards the stairs. However, a disconcerting realization dawned upon me. The distance I had traversed had multiplied. The light at the stairs' summit now appeared as a distant speck, akin to a lone star in the vast expanse of night. Maintaining composure, I ascended, each step grounding me as I counted them, reminiscent of childhood rituals. The shelves began to shift once more, returning to their familiar state, while the labels on the jars reverted to more recent dates. The 1820 jar remained in my grasp, a tangible reassurance that my experience was not a mere illusion. Emerging into the warm kitchen glow, I placed the jar on the first step, stealing a final glance into the cellar's shadows. A fleeting movement caught my eye, hinting at a distortion of time itself lurking in the depths. Seated with a cup of steaming tea, I pondered the events of that night. The jar, now bearing a label of Blackberry Jam 2023, emitted an aroma unlike any other, a fragrance redolent of time's essence, ancient and sweet. Subsequent visits to the cellar left me questioning the possibility of encountering that infinite corridor once more. The stairs remained constant, the shelves stocked with customary preserves. Yet in moments of dim light and profound silence, a sensation lingered that the cellar awaited, poised to unveil further temporal enigmas. Perhaps one day I will summon the courage to delve into that seemingly endless corridor, to uncover the enigma that lies at the juncture where time loses its grasp on reality. Story 15, the rain's gentle patter on the roof of the ancestral home, wove a hypnotic melody as I sifted through the final remnants of my grandmother's legacy. Nostalgia hung heavy in the air, mingling with the fragrance of aged wood and swirling dust particles basking in the evening sun's golden rays filtering through the cream-hued curtains. Each item I uncovered seemed to carry a tale, murmuring echoes of days long gone. It was in the depths of the last box that I stumbled upon a weathered photo album bound in dark leather. Though time had weathered its corners, the material still retained a softness that only years can impart. Reverently, I ran my fingers over the weathered cover before placing it on the antique oak table in the living room. The album exuded a faint aroma of must and aged paper as I turned its pages. Each black and white image painted vignettes of family life, weddings, birthdays, carefree summer days. A smile tugged at my lips as I recognized the faces of my forebears, seeing hints of resemblance in later generations. The rustle of pages melded seamlessly with the rain's gentle cadence on the window panes. Pausing at a photo captured in the garden, I spotted my grandmother, radiant in a floral dress, seated at a table with her siblings. Sunlight from a bygone summer day cast soft shadows on their joyous faces. Yet one figure stood apart, cloaked in mystery. Clad in a light dress that grazed her ankles, her face obscured by the brim of a wide hat, she seemed unfamiliar. She was absent from the tales shared during festive family gatherings. Gingerly, I lifted the photograph from its confines, searching for clues. On the back, my grandmother's elegant script bore a single annotation, Summer 1956. No further explanation. As I scrutinized the image, a chill breeze wafted through the room, causing the curtains to dance. Twilight descended, casting a cloak of obscurity over everything. Switching on an aged table lamp, its warm glow bathed the room in a soft light. Examining the photo anew, a disquieting detail caught my eye. The enigmatic figure's shadow defied logic, diverging from the others. While familial shadows stretched to the right in harmony with the sun's path, hers seemed cast from an alternate source. A shiver crept down my spine, stirring half-remembered whispers between my mother and aunt about a transient woman who had vanished without a trace. Rainfall intensified, its rhythm almost hypnotic. Fixated on the photograph, the figure appeared to sharpen, the rest of the scene blurring slightly. It felt as if she harbored a message within that frozen moment in time. Turning the photo over, faint markings in the corner caught my eye. Squinting beneath the lamplight, I deciphered a barely visible phrase, "She always sees." Gently returning the photograph to its place, I found myself unable to close the album. An unseen force impelled me to linger, as if a hidden truth lay within those pages, waiting to be unveiled. How many untold stories lay dormant within these walls? How many mysteries had been immortalized by a camera's lens, preserved in time's silent embrace? Night descended, cloaking the house in a hushed stillness. Seated by the window in an armchair, the album resting on my lap, I delved into contemplation. Who was she truly? What had she witnessed? And most of all, did she continue to watch? Leaving the album open on the table, I prepared for slumber, stealing one last glance from the threshold. In the flickering lamplight, for a fleeting instant, it seemed as if the figure had shifted, as though she had turned her gaze towards me. Yet it could have been a mere trick of shadows, or perhaps something deeper, a mystery destined to linger, safeguarded amid the weathered pages of a time-worn family album. Story 16. The gentle symphony of raindrops against my window had become an intimate companion during my nocturnal writing rituals. Each droplet journeyed down the glass, etching shimmering trails in its wake, painting a fluid masterpiece of light and shadow. The soft radiance of my desk lamp enveloped me in a comforting amber sphere, while the rest of the room embraced me in a cloak of tranquility. I found solace in studying the raindrops, deciphering the intricate patterns of their meandering paths. Occasionally, my mind would wander from my writing, delving into fanciful tales concealed within their crystalline trails. However, this particular night held a peculiar allure. The rainwater seemed to flow in mysterious ways, as if guided by an unseen force. Initially, I brushed it off as a trick of my weary eyes, on the brink of succumbing to the peaceful limbo between consciousness and slumber. Yet the enigmatic dance of the droplets grew more pronounced as I continued to observe. They avoided certain areas of the glass, creating dry patches that gradually outlined a figure. Intrigued, I leaned closer to the window, mesmerized by the reflection that not only mirrored the rain, but also the dimly lit interior of my room behind me. A subtle peculiarity caught my eye. My reflection appeared slightly out of sync with my movements, as if trailing them by a fraction of a second. The soothing melody of rain intensified, enveloping me in its hypnotic rhythm. As I watched, captivated, my reflection's hand reached out to touch the glass, mirroring a gesture that my own hand did not make. The motion flowed elegantly, akin to a dancer performing a choreography unknown to me. A gentle warmth spread through me, contrasting the cool night air near the window. Gradually, the features of my reflection began to transform, undergoing subtle changes that rendered it simultaneously familiar and foreign. The eyes that met mine held a profound wisdom, depths that transcended time itself. Motionless, I observed as my reflection metamorphosed into a being beyond gender or age, embodying a timeless essence. The rain encircled it in a shimmering frame, defying gravity with each droplet moving in flawless circles. A fleeting flicker of my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, ushering in a momentary darkness. In that ephemeral void, I sensed a presence by my side, as tender as a caress from a loved one. When the light steadied, my reflection reverted to its usual mimicry of my actions. Yet the rain persisted in its impossible dance, a silent testament to the extraordinary visitation. For hours I remained by the window, contemplating the enigma that had unfolded before me. The lingering presence felt akin to a cherished melody, neither alarming nor intrusive. With the arrival of dawn, the rain gradually waned, leaving behind a window adorned with commonplace water streaks. Since that night, I find myself drawn to that window on rainy evenings, abandoning pen and paper on my desk. Occasionally, under the perfect conditions when the rain forms a mirror-like surface, I catch fleeting glimpses of that alternate self observing me through the glass. A mutual understanding binds us, acknowledging that certain mysteries are destined to be experienced rather than deciphered. The rain persists in its descent, each droplet carrying the promise of another encounter. In those moments of silent observation, where watcher becomes the watched, I ponder if in a parallel realm, another iteration of myself sits by their own window, yearning to catch a glimpse of my world through the silver threads of rain. Story 17. The first time I noticed the phenomenon was on a serene autumn evening. Lost in the pages of an ancient tome in my study, a peculiar dwindling of natural light caught my attention. Glancing up, I beheld an extraordinary sight. The sky above my abode was slowly cloaking itself in darkness, while the surroundings basked in the warm hues of sunset. A subtle yet undeniable contrast unfolded before my eyes. It felt as though an unseen veil had chosen to hover solely over my roof. The air carried the scent of moist earth and fallen leaves, and a gentle breeze caused the lace curtains to dance at the windows. Their delicate rustling produced a mesmerizing melody that seemed to harmonize with this strange spectacle of nature. In the days that followed, the phenomenon repeated itself. Each evening, as the sun descended towards the horizon, that specific patch of sky above my dwelling adopted deeper shades compared to the rest of the heavens. It appeared as if a painter had brushed strokes of gray and midnight blue across a square of the sky, creating a surreal juxtaposition with the vibrant blue surrounding it. I found myself entranced by this display, spending hours in my old velvet armchair by the window, the wooden floor murmuring softly as I shifted to follow the celestial procession. The room's air grew cooler, and a delicate film of condensation adorned the window panes, crafting abstract patterns that seemed to waltz with the shadows. One day, while immersed in contemplation of this enigma, a new revelation dawned upon me. Amidst that darkened expanse, tiny lights began to flicker into existence and vanish, like stars choosing to shimmer solely for my gaze. Their movements lacked a discernible pattern, yet held a hypnotic quality, almost melodic. The house's silence only served to amplify their presence, while the ticking of the hallway clock's pendulum fashioned a rhythm that seemed to synchronize with their dance. With the passage of weeks, I noticed subtle reactions of objects within my dwelling to this phenomenon. The antique mirrors appeared to reflect a gentler, more embracing light. Shadows elongated in peculiar manners, shaping forms reminiscent of ancient symbols. The window plants flourished more vibrantly during these moments of selective darkness, as though drawing sustenance from that specific twilight. One evening, seated in my study, I felt a faint touch upon my shoulder, akin to a breeze-caressed caress. Upon turning, I found no one there as expected. The fragrance of aged tomes and weathered wood permeating the room intensified, and for a brief instant, time seemed to halt. The clock's hands continued their march, yet their chimes sounded distant. I commenced a diary to chronicle these occurrences, documenting every nuanced shift in the darkness's intensity and the accompanying phenomena. My entries brimmed with detailed depictions of light alterations, shadow movements, and the subtle vibrations infusing the air. During these moments, my script became more graceful and fluid, as if guided by a gentle, enigmatic hand. Occasionally, on the stillest of nights, I fancied a melody emanating from that darkened segment of sky. It eluded verbal description, more a sensation that resonated within me. It felt as though that darkness harbored an ancient harmony, a cosmic lullaby privy solely to my dwelling. As time elapsed, I grew to embrace this mystery rather than dread it. My abode had transformed into a conduit between the ordinary realm and something grander, more profound. While the world outside carried on with its daily rhythm, I found myself enfolded in the embrace of these soft shadows, in this play of light and darkness that seemed tailored exclusively for me. Thus, night after night, I continued to observe the darkening sky above my dwelling, cognizant that certain enigmas need not be unraveled, but merely savored. My home had evolved into a sanctuary of marvel, a realm where the mundane and miraculous intermingled in an eternal waltz of light and shadow, of known and unknown, of reality and reverie. Story 18, the autumn breeze whispered secrets through the rustling leaves as my car glided down the quiet country road, bathed in the warm hues of a setting sun. The GPS had long given up its guidance, but I felt no unease. Familiar with this area, or so I thought, I ventured on. The road meandered gently amidst hills adorned with vineyards stripped bare by the season. A breath of crisp air slipped through the cracked window, carrying the earthy fragrance of moist soil and fallen foliage. In that suspended moment, time seemed to stretch infinitely, allowing me to relish each passing second. Turning right at a weathered wooden sign, a peculiar realization dawned on me. This road was absent from my mental map of the region. Pausing briefly, I tried to reorient myself. Shadows extended languidly, weaving evocative patterns among the trees flanking the path. The asphalt beneath my wheels was unnaturally smooth, devoid of any blemishes typical of a forgotten back road. No potholes, no cracks, just a flawless ribbon vanishing into the encroaching evening mist. Listless leaves pirouetted in the air, as if time itself moved sluggishly in this realm. Pressing onward at a cautious pace, my curiosity heightened as the landscape transformed before me. Trees lining the roadside appeared ancient, their gnarled branches reaching out like arthritic fingers. Canopies intertwined overhead, forming a natural tunnel through which waning twilight seeped. Distant pinpricks of light flickered like misplaced fireflies amidst the trees, flitting in and out of sight like fleeting memories. Silence enveloped me, palpable and serene, broken solely by the soft hum of the engine and the whisper of leaves stirred by the breeze. Advancing further, subtle shifts in the road caught my attention. The borders blurred as if painted by an invisible brush. Shadows deepened, yet not menacingly so. Reality itself seemed to soften, its edges melting away. Abruptly, a sight drew my gaze, an antiquated brass mailbox perched by the roadside, its pristine condition belying age. Adorned with an intricate compass rose, devoid of any name or number, it exuded a faint warmth as my hand brushed its surface, despite the chill of evening. The path continued its sinuous course, revealing increasingly peculiar details. Small stones lining the edge emitted a soft glow as though imbued with an inner luminescence. Peering closer, I discerned that the light emanated from within the stones themselves. The sky above assumed an indefinable hue, a color unique to this forgotten realm. Stars timidly emerged, their gleam altered, as if beholding a firmament from another era or dimension. After what might have been hours or mere minutes, I crested a hill, unveiling a small, circular clearing paved with weathered stones. At its heart stood an ancient lamppost, casting a welcoming glow. Halting my car, I stepped out into an eerily still atmosphere, as if time held its breath. From this vantage point, I glimpsed the distant city lights I had departed, distant and alien behind an unseen veil. Observing the panorama, I noted a transformation in the road behind me, a path of ancient stones, worn by the passage of ages, replacing the modern asphalt I had traversed mere moments ago. Returning to my vehicle, I retrieved a road map from the glove compartment. Bathed in the lamplight's warmth, I scrutinized the map meticulously. True to my intuition, the road I had journeyed remained absent, as if I had traversed a space existing solely in dreams. Folding the map, a sudden gust made it quiver in my grasp. Fleetingly, golden lines seemed to materialize, tracing a faintly glowing path before dissolving. Blinking, I found the vision vanished. Remaining in that surreal enclave a while longer, I absorbed the tranquility it exuded. When the decision to depart finally settled upon me, I noticed the lamppost had extinguished itself soundlessly. Ahead, darkness cloaked the road, yet an intangible knowledge assured me it led homeward. Driving towards the city, I cast furtive glances in my rearview mirror. The lamppost rekindled, its light diminishing as distance grew. A spectral radiance danced in the air, as though stardust had been scattered upon that road uncharted by maps. In the ensuing days, I sought tirelessly to rediscover that enigmatic road. Hours drifted by as I combed the countryside, tracing every turn and fork. Yet that singular path, with its solitary lamppost and luminous stones, eluded me like a mirage at dawn. A A slender golden trace on my aged map stood as sole testament to my journey, visible only when light struck it, just so a clandestine secret awaiting rediscovery. Story 19. Night draped the ancient countryside house in a serene embrace. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed the shadows waltz on the walls as the flames leisurely devoured the logs. The warmth enveloped me like a cozy quilt, while outside, the autumn breeze tenderly rustled the tree leaves. In the midst of this perfect tranquility, a peculiar sound caught my attention, a clear, childlike laughter wafting from the upper floor of the house. It was a laughter akin to silver bells, pure and joyous. Pausing to listen, I allowed the sound to mingle with the crackling fire. There was no hint of menace. Instead, it exuded merriment, almost melodic. Having lived alone in this house for over 2 decades, never welcoming children within its walls, curiosity stirred within me like a gentle stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that threatened to overtake me. With deliberate movements, I rose from the armchair, relishing the sensation as my feet met the ancient Persian rug. The floorboards murmured softly under my weight as I made my way towards the staircase. The flickering candlelight in the living room cast a welcoming glow, casting my shadow in a silent dance on the walls. Ascending the stairs, I noticed the air growing cooler with each step. It was not a harsh cold, but rather a caress on the skin, reminiscent of the gentle ocean breeze. The laughter echoed once more, closer this time, emanating from the guest room, a room seldom used, furnished with antiquities veiled in white sheets that fluttered as if stirred by an unseen draft. The door stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to filter through, unlike any other light in the house. Not moonlight too warm for that, nor the glow of electric lamps. It was a unique light, pulsating softly, akin to a tranquil heartbeat. Pushing the door, the aged wood sang a familiar tune. The room unfolded before me, bathed in that ethereal luminescence. The draped furniture formed gentle, reassuring shapes resembling clouds in a clear sky. And there, perched on the window ledge, I beheld a sight that stole my breath, not a distinct figure, but an interplay of light and shadow that mimicked a child. The laughter chimed again, clearly emanating from that radiant presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. Light child seemed to frolic with the beams it emitted, crafting luminous patterns on the walls as if painting with light itself. Approaching cautiously, the room's temperature fluctuated between cool and warm, like the ebb and flow of ocean waves. Drawing nearer, a sense of familiarity washed over me. In its fluid motions, I recognized echoes of my childhood self playing alone in my room. A forgotten memory stirred within me, sweet and poignant. That crystalline, pure laughter belonged to my childhood self. Time seemed to pause as I absorbed the surreal spectacle. The light child continued its wordless play, occasionally punctuated by that melodious laughter, a reverberation from the past. I refrained from speaking or disrupting the peaceful ambience, fearing to shatter the spell of tranquility and nostalgia. Gradually, the silvery light dimmed, akin to the sun setting on a wintry afternoon. The childlike figure grew increasingly ethereal until only a faint glow lingered. The final laughter, almost a whisper, bid a gentle farewell before fading into darkness. I lingered in the room, enveloped in a profound silence that seemed to stretch into eternity. The draped furniture lay still, the air reverting to its usual temperature, yet something had shifted. The guest room, once a repository of dusty memories, now harbored a precious enigma. Retreating to my armchair by the fireplace, the embers smoldering softly, I realized that the events of that night would forever remain a mystery. Was it a dream, a memory resurfacing? Or perchance a profound message from the past, embodied in a child's laughter in the night? Since that night, whenever I pass by the guest room, I pause and listen. On the quietest of nights, a faint echo of that crystalline laughter seems to drift towards me, a soothing lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the mystery to linger, a cherished secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the darkness. Story 20. The gentle night breeze whispered through the air, carrying with it the scent of moist earth and night-blooming blossoms. Nestled in my cherished armchair, I tuned into the soft exhales of the old house enveloping me. The aged wooden beams emitted faint groans, as if harboring ancient tales within their fibers. Amid the tranquil ambience, a peculiar sound reached my ears, a steady, rhythmic beating echoing from the upper hallway. Resembling a door knocker swayed by the wind, yet possessing an eerie regularity that bordered on hypnotic. The gentle glow of the reading lamp painted dancing silhouettes on the wallpaper, forming shapes that seemed to dance in a silent ballet. Setting aside my book, I remained motionless, fixated on the persistent rhythm. Not an intrusive noise, but rather a soothing melody in its consistent cadence. Rising leisurely, my slippers sinking into the plush Persian rug, I made my way towards the staircase. Each step on the time-worn wooden treads emitted a soft lament, as if the house itself was acknowledging my inquisitiveness. The rhythmic beating persisted, unchanged in its tempo, beckoning me through the dimly lit corridor where moonbeams filtered through the tall windows. Upstairs, the air carried a coolness tinged with the faint aroma of ancient wood and beeswax. Tracing the sound, I reached the entrance to the old library. It stood shut as always, while the brass knocker continued its metronomic dance against the sturdy oak. No breeze stirred the air. All windows along the hallway remained sealed. Enthralled, I watched the hefty knocker move of its own accord, as if an unseen force guided it with infinite patience. Drawn toward it, almost entranced by its rhythmic sway, I approached. The sound grew clearer, nuances in its rhythm hinting at a cryptic musical pattern eluding my grasp. Reaching for the brass handle, the chill of the metal under my touch, worn smooth by generations, greeted me. The door, though unlocked, resisted my efforts to open it. Not obstructed, yet it felt as though a gentle force beyond held it shut. The knocker persisted in its dance, indifferent to my presence, as if enacting an ancient ritual. Seating myself on the floor, my back against the wall beside the door, I surrendered to the mesmerizing beat. Time slipped away as I lingered in that posture, absorbing the tale woven by the relentless sound. Eyelids drooping, my mind meandered through hazy recollections of ancient libraries and forgotten tomes. The beat fused seamlessly with my breath, my pulse harmonizing with the nocturnal cadence. When I blinked open my eyes, dawn had begun to paint the hallway in a faint glow. The knocker lay still, silent as though it had never moved. Rising slowly, my limbs tingling from the hours spent on the floor, this time the door yielded effortlessly to my touch. The library greeted me as I had left it the prior day, books neatly aligned, dust suspended in the morning light. Yet on the antique desk, bathed in the first sunbeam, lay an open book I did not recall placing there, its pages pristine, as if anticipating the inscription of an untold tale. Since that night, the brass knocker has remained still, yet on the quietest evenings, a distant echo of that rhythmic beat seems to linger in the air, as if the house itself endeavored to recall a forgotten melody. Story 21. Silence draped the streets of the quaint hillside town like a luxurious velvet blanket. It was a night in autumn when the air carried hints of burning wood and damp leaves, and a mist slithered through the narrow alleys like a silent feline. From my perch on the third floor, I observed the windows of the neighboring houses, each bathed in a soft, amber glow. It struck me as odd to see so many lights ablaze at this late hour, yet no signs of life stirred behind the foggy panes. The church bell chimed 10 times, its toll ringing hollow, as if shrouded in a cloak of cotton. Though I had only recently arrived in this town, I had never witnessed the streets so eerily deserted. Normally, even at this hour, a stray dog walker or a group of youngsters from the local bar would dot the nighttime landscape. Nestled in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, I noted the absence of even the usual stray cat that frequented Mrs. Miller's windowsill. The wisps of steam spiraling from my cup twirled in the air, weaving ephemeral shapes that dissolved into the room's darkness. Opting for just a faint reading lamp, the soft light cast gentle shadows on the cream-colored walls. A sudden rustle broke the stillness, emanating from the corridor leading to the bedroom. Intrigued more than frightened, I rose from my seat, setting the cup down on the wooden side table. As I neared the hallway, a chill enveloped the air, not the harsh cold of winter, but a coolness reminiscent of a hallowed church. The floorboards murmured softly beneath my feet, a familiar sound that oddly comforted me. Pausing at the bedroom's threshold, I hesitated. The door stood slightly ajar, emitting a bluish light unlike any other in the house. Pushing the door open, it creaked softly. The window was shut, yet the curtains swayed as if stirred by a gentle breeze. Resting on the floor beneath the window lay a single sheet of paper. I bent to retrieve it, discovering it to be a newspaper page. The date atop it read October 15, 1954, and the headline immediately seized my attention: Mysterious Night of Silence in Pine Grove. The article recounted a night when all the town's denizens had remained sequestered in their homes, as if bound by an unspoken pact whose origins had faded into obscurity. Engrossed in the text, a movement outside the window snagged my gaze. Lights in the houses across the street flickered out successively, like candles extinguished by a breeze. Yet within the darkened windows, motionless silhouettes fixed their gaze upon the street. A buzz in my robe pocket heralded a message from the building's WhatsApp group: "Tonight, stay indoors, it's crucial." Peering outside once more, I noticed that all the lights had now dimmed, save for mine. In the thickening silence, I discerned my heartbeat slowing, as if harmonizing with something ancient and enigmatic. Perching on the edge of the bed, I clutched the newspaper sheet, its texture unbelievably soft, as though handled countless times. Beyond the window, the fog thickened, enveloping the streetlights in a milky shroud. Surveying the town's main thoroughfare utterly deserted, I recalled the article's mention of how, after that enigmatic night, the residents had no recollection of what had occurred. Life had resumed as usual, but sporadically the peculiar phenomenon recurred. Rising slowly, I made my way to the light switch. Before extinguishing it, I stole a final glance outside. The mist now swirled in sinuous, almost dancing patterns, forming figures that seemed to glide within it, like shadows adrift on a sea of milk. With the room plunged into darkness, I settled onto the bed, fully clothed. The silence had deepened, punctuated only by the metronomic ticking of the clock on the nightstand. Drifting into a profound slumber, I pondered whether I would recall this night come morning, or if I, too, would be ensnared in the cycle of forgetfulness like the other townsfolk. The last vestige of consciousness before sleep claimed me was the distant tolling of midnight bells, their chime oddly muted, as though echoing from a realm where silence reigned as the universal language. Story 22. Autumn nights in our neighborhood hold a whispered magic, a gentle secret carried on the cool air scented with fallen leaves and the hushed murmur of footsteps on damp streets. Lately, on my evening walks home from work, a peculiar occurrence has captured my attention. It revolves around the streetlight perched at the intersection of Maple Street and Rose Avenue, standing apart from its brethren in its behavior. While other lights cast a steady, yellow glow, this one is different. As I draw near, a subtle change unfolds. The light begins to dim, almost as if it wishes to shield some hidden truth from my gaze. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere glitch, a neglected relic in need of repair, but fascination spurred me to observe further. The dimming occurred solely in response to my approach. I tested this peculiarity one evening, pausing 60 feet away, leaning against the weathered facade of the Art Deco building on the corner. From my vantage point, the streetlight's beam painted elongated shadows on the sidewalk, casting a soft gleam on the dew-kissed grass of a nearby garden. With each step closer, the light faltered slightly, as though holding its breath. At a mere 15 feet away, the once radiant glow had dwindled to a mere flicker, casting a faint halo around me. The night's silence deepened beneath the muted light, as if the very essence of sound retreated alongside the fading glow. Beneath the streetlight's gaze, I peered up at its glass. In the dimness, faint markings etched a cryptic pattern across its surface, elusive and enigmatic. A cautious attempt to illuminate it with my phone was thwarted by a sudden gust, prompting a rustling of tree leaves that hinted at unseen movements within the glass. In the days that followed, I altered my route to intersect beneath that mysterious streetlight. Each encounter unfolded in the same ritualistic manner: the dimming light, the thickening silence, the sensation of unseen eyes watching from above. Subtle nuances emerged, shifts in color, imperceptible changes hinting at a cryptic dialogue. One moonlit night, nestled in the familiar circle of twilight beneath the streetlight, a peculiar sound reached my ears. A delicate metallic hum, almost melodic in its rhythm, resonated from within the pole, pulsing like a distant song. Placing my hand against the cold metal, I felt the vibrations coursing through me, as if the streetlight sought to convey a message. Documenting each encounter meticulously, I discerned a correlation between the dimming intensity and lunar phases. During the new moon, the light nearly extinguished upon my passing, while on full moon nights it retained a steady glow. Notably, the light always restored itself to full brightness precisely 23 seconds after I moved beyond its reach. Curiously, the streetlight's conduct began to influence my own actions. I found myself slowing, participating in an unspoken communion as I neared its glow. At times, I lingered beneath its diminished light, enveloped in the ethereal hum that whispered tales of forgotten epics. I refrained from seeking a rational explanation for this phenomenon, content in my ignorance. Perhaps some mysteries are best left unexplored. In this secluded corner of the city, an enigma thrives, sharing its presence solely with me. Each evening, as I journey homeward, I sense the streetlight's anticipation, ready to craft our shared twilight sanctuary. Thus, night after night, I engage in this curious dance with the streetlight that dims in my passing. Whether electrical anomaly, inexplicable wonder, or something more profound, I remain uncertain. Yet within that fleeting veil of darkness, as the world recedes and shadows deepen, I find myself entwined in a narrative spoken through the language of light and shade, partaking in a mystery that transcends the bounds of comprehension. Story 23, the weariness of a long day clung to me as I entered my study. The warm amber glow of the desk lamp cast gentle shadows across the walls adorned with shelves of books. The familiar scent of aged paper and ink embraced me like an old friend as I sank into the worn leather armchair. Resting on the polished wooden desk was my cherished old diary, a relic gifted to me by my grandmother, its brown leather cover and yellowed pages holding my innermost thoughts. As I reached out to open it, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The last page I had written was no longer blank. In an elegant script, unfamiliar to me, words adorned the page as if they had just been penned. Intrigued, I drew closer, my breath slowing as I delved into the mysterious text. The words painted a vivid picture of an autumn evening, detailing the very room I was sitting in at that moment. The soft patter of rain against the window pane created a soothing melody that blended with the rustle of pages turning as if by an unseen hand. The flickering light of the lamp danced playfully, casting shifting shadows around the room. Mesmerized, I read on, captivated by the enigmatic prose that seemed to anticipate my every move. Curiosity led him to turn the page. The text beckoned, and as if in a trance, my fingers obeyed, revealing new words materializing before me in real time. The ink flowed effortlessly, capturing the sensations and nuances of my surroundings with eerie accuracy. The warmth of the lamp, the weight of the air, the faint shiver down my spine, all described with uncanny precision. I stood, unable to tear my gaze away from the pages that continued to fill with a narrative that felt intimately connected to my own reality. The sentences now detailed the books on the shelves, titles I didn't recall owning but found to be present as I scanned the room. Seated once more, this time on the corner couch, I watched as the diary remained open on the desk, its pages gently turning as if stirred by an unseen breeze. The rain outside grew louder, cocooning me in a barrier of sound that seemed to separate me from the outside world. The room itself seemed to shift, becoming a sanctuary of mystery, detached from the mundane. Closing my eyes, I let the rain's rhythmic patter lull me into a tranquil state. When I opened them, the diary had transformed. The words now delved into memories long forgotten, moments of my past laid bare on the pages. With cautious steps, I approached the desk, the words morphing into a dialogue that felt like a conversation with my own soul. Each word a revelation, each sentence a step towards a profound understanding. As the night deepened, so did the sense of peace and curiosity that enveloped me. There was no fear, only a profound connection to the unfolding narrative. Hours slipped by unnoticed, lost in the silent exchange with the diary. As the midnight hour chimed, I realized the depth of the connection forged through those self-scripting pages. The final words appeared, cryptic yet profound. Some mysteries need no solving, only understanding. Closing the diary gently, I felt the familiar touch of the leather cover beneath my fingertips. The rain outside had transformed into a soothing backdrop, a comforting presence. I wondered if the words would endure till morning or fade like a dream upon waking. Preparing for bed, I stole a final glance at the study. The diary lay innocently on the desk, unchanged outwardly, yet a catalyst for internal transformation. Night enveloped the room in a hushed embrace, the lamp's glow a silent witness to a mystery that defied explanation. Closing the door, I pondered the essence of mysteries left unsolved, realizing their inherent beauty in their enigmatic allure. Story 24. The rain whispered its gentle song against the windows of the cozy establishment, harmonizing with the soft clinks of cups and the hushed chatter of the remaining patrons. Seated at the bar, I observed the play of dim lights dancing on the polished surface of the mahogany counter. Jack, the bartender, moved with a deliberate rhythm as he cleaned glasses, his motions almost hypnotic in their precision. That evening, a subtle shift lingered in his gaze, a depth I had not previously discerned in my daily visits. His dark eyes held a mystery as he prepared my usual lavender tea, hands moving with practiced accuracy, though a faint tremor betrayed his composure when he set the cup before me. The aroma of lavender mingled with the scent of coffee and aged wood, weaving a fragrant tapestry through the air. Jack's furtive glances toward a solitary figure seated in the far corner drew my attention. The figure remained still, blending into the shadows as if a part of the furniture itself. With measured steps, Jack approached to refill my cup, a controlled breath carrying a hint of tension in his voice as he inquired if I desired anything more. In that moment, a crimson stain on his otherwise pristine white cuff caught my eye, a subtle detail illuminated by the dim ambience of the bar. Time drifted by leisurely while the rain's melodic cadence persisted, a tranquil backdrop to the unfolding enigma. As the other patrons departed, leaving vacant chairs and forgotten cups in their wake, the enigmatic figure in the corner remained, a silent sentinel awaiting an unknown rendezvous. Jack's meticulous reorganization of the bar betrayed a mounting disquiet, each bottle aligned with meticulous care, every surface already immaculate receiving an unnecessary dusting. The pendulum clock's rhythmic ticking underscored the passing hours, a metronome to the unfolding mystery. Beneath the counter, nestled among the bottles, a weathered notebook lay concealed, its yellowed pages a silent testament to untold tales. The minuscule, precise handwriting chronicled names, dates, and places in meticulous order, but it was the cryptic annotations on the final pages that captivated my gaze. Numbers devoid of apparent meaning stood beside meticulously drawn symbols, a puzzle waiting to be deciphered. Footsteps interrupted my contemplation, drawing my attention to the figure now rising from their secluded table, moving purposefully toward the exit. A fleeting exchange of glances between them and Jack crackled with unspoken tension, a moment pregnant with significance. The bartender's imperceptible nod acknowledged a shared understanding as the stranger vanished into the rainy night. Jack resumed his duties, yet a subtle shift in his demeanor did not escape notice. Hands that once moved with unwavering steadiness now trembled slightly, his gaze distant, lost in contemplation or perhaps in evasion of unwelcome recollections. As I readied to depart, Jack halted me with a gentle gesture, his voice a soft murmur laden with weighty confessions. "There are things," he began, his words a whispered secret carried on the breath of the night, "that a bartender witnesses and hears, things that should remain veiled within these walls of silence. Yet sometimes the burden of these secrets becomes too weighty to bear alone." His eyes, tired and burdened, held a tale untold, a narrative woven into the fabric of his being. The notebook, a silent witness to clandestine truths, lay half hidden among the bottles, a repository of mysteries waiting to be unfurled. Jack's weary smile, devoid of mirth, hinted at depths unseen, a promise of revelations veiled in uncertainty. "Return tomorrow," his voice trailed off, a mere whisper in the night. "Perhaps a story shall be shared, or perhaps not." Stepping into the enshrouding darkness of the night, the rain's gentle cadence persisted, a soothing lullaby for the weary soul. Through the window's pane, I glimpsed Jack resuming his meticulous routine, a facade of normalcy overlaying concealed depths. The dimming lights bore witness to the mysteries harbored within those walls, secrets too profound to be fully unraveled. As I ventured forth, shadows lengthening in my wake, I pondered the countless untold stories hidden beneath bar counters, the silent sentinels like Jack safeguarding secrets too weighty to disclose. The answer eluded me, obscured by the comforting patter of rain on the starless night, a reminder of unseen truths lingering in the veiled recesses of the world. Story 25. As the heavy rain drummed a hypnotic melody on the roof of my rustic country house, I settled in for another tranquil evening alone. The drops cascaded down the window panes, tracing sinuous patterns that swayed in the soft flicker of candlelight I had kindled to push back the encroaching darkness. A gentle breeze wafted through the trees in the garden, their leaves rustling in a soothing, natural lullaby. Nestled in my beloved armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, I idly watched wisps of vapor spiral gracefully into the air. The house murmured its familiar symphony, the faint groan of shifting wood, the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock in the foyer, the gentle whistle of wind whispering through unseen crevices. All seemed ordinary, yet a subtle unease began to stir in the tranquility of the evening. It was as I savored my tea that I first glimpsed something out of the ordinary. The upstairs bedroom window, reflected in the hallway mirror, exuded an unusual glow, as though a phantom candle flickered within. But I knew unequivocally that no light illuminated that room. Setting down my cup on the small table beside me, I rose slowly and made my way to the staircase. Each wooden step groaned beneath my weight, a sound familiar to me after years of dwelling within these walls. Yet that night, every creak sounded distinct, as if the house itself sought to convey a message. The air grew chillier as I ascended, a thin veil of moisture seeming to cling to the walls of the upper corridor. Pausing before the bedroom door, I hesitated briefly before turning the brass handle. Its icy touch sent a shiver down my spine, almost numbing. With a soft squeak, the door swung open, revealing the room steeped in shadows. The window, the very one I had glimpsed in the mirror, remained shut. Yet my eyes widened in disbelief as I witnessed the lock shifting of its own accord, a ghostly hand guiding its movement. To my astonishment, the window began to slide open gradually, inch by inch, devoid of any visible force propelling it. The gentle breeze that slipped in did not account for the window's motion, and the air it carried bore a faint, age-old aroma, a blend of dried flowers and ancient timber. Approaching cautiously, I watched raindrops trickle into the room, forming small pools on the wooden sill. But what captivated me was the mesmerizing dance of the drops, defying gravity as they swirled in the air, creating intricate patterns before alighting on the floor with a soft pitter-patter. While entranced by this inexplicable spectacle, a movement drew my gaze to the window glass, where phantom script began to materialize, as if an unseen hand inscribed letters on the misted surface. The words coalesced slowly, yet remained too blurred to decipher. The curtains stirred gently, though no draft stirred the air. Their swaying mimicked the slow, rhythmic breaths of a slumbering figure. Moonlight filtered through rain-laden clouds cast dancing shadows on the walls, each shadow a silent tale in itself. Extending a hand toward the window, I felt the cool breath of the outside world caress my fingertips. Just as I was about to make contact with the glass, the window closed softly, as gradually as it had opened. The latch clicked with a delicate finality, and the ancient fragrance that had pervaded the room began to dissipate. Motionless, I stood for several minutes, listening to the persistent patter of rain outside. The room had reverted to its usual appearance, yet a subtle shift had occurred. It was as though the house had unveiled a fragment of another realm, a hidden world that intersected with ours, visible only in those rare moments when the boundary between reality and enigma thins to a gossamer veil. Since that fateful night, whenever rain descends, I ensconce myself in my armchair, studying the reflection of the window in the hallway mirror. Sometimes it remains inert, while other times it eases open slowly, in a silent ritual that has woven itself into the fabric of my existence. The source of this phenomenon remains a mystery, but I have come to embrace it as a part of the enigma that enshrouds my dwelling, a secret shared solely between me and these ancient walls. And on the stillest of nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and the rain falls with a gentle hush, I almost sense a familiar presence watching over me, an unseen guardian who has opted to coexist within this space, revealing itself through a window that unlatches of its own accord. Story 26. The snow drifted down like silent whispers that evening in my quaint vintage shop. Each delicate flake pirouetted behind the frosted windows, bathed in the gentle glow of antique lamps, casting a soft and inviting aura within. The aged wooden shelves murmured softly as if sharing a secret with the rhythmic swing of the pendulum clock. The air was a tapestry woven with the scents of ancient books and beeswax, a fragrance that only objects steeped in history could exhale. I was arranging dusty tomes when the doorbell sang out with crystalline clarity. A rush of icy air slipped into the warmth of the shop, carrying with it a handful of snowflakes that dissolved upon the creaking wooden floor. Turning to greet the visitor, I was momentarily struck by a tall figure standing at the threshold. Wrapped in a cloak that seemed to swallow the light, their face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a gray wool scarf. "Good evening," I murmured, attempting to maintain a professional demeanor despite a subtle shiver creeping up my spine. The figure glided wordlessly among the shelves, their gloved hands skimming the displayed curiosities with a delicate touch. Each movement held a mesmerizing quality, almost as if they were dancing to a silent melody known only to them. I found myself captivated by their every gesture, noting how the light bent strangely around their form. Shadows deepened and thickened, possessing a life of their own. Pausing before an antique mirror from the 18th century, a recent addition to my collection, the mysterious visitor traced the golden frame with deliberate grace. A heavy silence settled in the shop, broken only by the languid tick-tock of the clock, each second stretching like taffy. I tried to catch their reflection in the mirror, but to my disquiet, the glass revealed only the shelves behind them, as if they were a phantom presence. Approaching cautiously, the floor creaking beneath my steps, I inquired, "Can I assist you in finding something specific?" My voice carried a note of unease. Slowly, the figure turned towards me, their features shrouded in shadow beneath the hat. With a fluid motion, they produced a yellowed parchment from their coat pocket and unfolded it on the counter beside the cash register. The list, penned in elegant script, detailed peculiar items: a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that opens forgotten doors. As I perused the list, a chill seemed to settle in the shop, my breath materializing in frosty puffs. The objects on the shelves seemed to hum imperceptibly, as if recognizing a kinship with the enigmatic visitor. "I'm sorry," I murmured, "but I don't believe I possess these particular items." The figure remained still for a long moment before nodding slowly. Retrieving the paper with a graceful motion, they tucked it back into their coat as effortlessly as they had produced it. Making their way to the door, the visitor paused before departing. With a slight turn, a whispered sound emanated from beneath the scarf, more akin to a thought than a voice. "You will." It wasn't a question, but a statement of certainty. The bell chimed once more as they exited, its tone different, resonating from a distant place. Outside, the snow fell unabated, yet for a fleeting instant, it seemed suspended in time, frozen in midair. After closing the shop that night, I found myself drawn to the antique mirror. Its reflective surface appeared deeper, hinting at concealed mysteries within its silvery depths. The pendulum clock, the faithful timekeeper, had halted precisely at the moment the visitor had crossed the threshold. Since that night, as twilight descends and shadows lengthen, I often catch myself gazing towards the door, awaiting the familiar chime of the bell. Every object in the shop seems to hold its breath, as if anticipating the return of the mysterious visitor. In an antique shop, each item carries a tale within its worn threads and tarnished surfaces, and perhaps, just perhaps, some objects are yet to embark on their own narrative journey. Story 27, the night had ensconced the ancient house in a velvety shroud of quietness, broken only by the soft patter of autumn rain against the window panes. Nestled in my beloved armchair, cradling a hot cup of tea, I idly gazed at the painting hanging across from me. An heirloom from my grandmother, it portrayed a woodland scene at dusk. Though not a priceless piece, it never failed to draw me in with its ability to evoke a sense of wistful tranquility. As the golden glow of the floor lamp cast dancing shadows around the room that evening, a peculiar realization dawned on me. The painting appeared slightly askew to the right, a deviation from the straight alignment I swore I had always known. Setting down my cup on the nearby table, I rose, the floorboards whispering beneath my cautious steps as I drew nearer to the wall. With a gentle touch, I straightened the painting, the rough texture of the aged frame brushing against my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I took up the book I had momentarily abandoned. The warmth of the tea and the soothing cadence of the raindrops outside lulled me into a contented drowsiness. It was only after a short while that I lifted my gaze and noticed the painting now tilted to the left. A subtle chill tingled down my spine as I tried to rationalize it as mere fatigue or a trick of light and shadow. Rising once more, this time more deliberately, I approached the painting, noticing a detail previously unseen. The sunset hues appeared richer, almost pulsating, and the tree shadows seemed elongated compared to before. With trembling fingers, I reached out to touch the canvas. It radiated warmth as though it had absorbed the room's heat, yet there was a peculiar quality to how the paint caught the light. In the days that followed, my attention was drawn increasingly to the painting. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted ever so slightly. Sometimes the change was barely perceptible, while on other occasions it was more pronounced. Not only did its tilt vary, but the very essence of the painting seemed to undergo subtle alterations. The density of the trees would fluctuate, the clouds in the painted sky would morph in shape. I began documenting these changes by capturing photographs of the painting every morning and evening, meticulously comparing them. The variances, though slight, were undeniable. Within the painted forest, ephemeral details emerged and vanished. A nest nestled among the branches, a hidden glade, a faint path that materialized out of nowhere. The sunset itself seemed to shift imperceptibly, as though time within the painting flowed to a different tempo than our own. On a particularly tranquil evening, ensconced in my customary armchair, I caught a movement in my peripheral vision. The painting was tilting on its own, moving with a nearly imperceptible grace. Instead of fear, a profound curiosity mingled with a surreal sense of calm enveloped me. The motion was fluid, as if an unseen hand tenderly caressed it. Drawing closer to the painting once more, this time without hesitation, I sensed a faint vibration emanating from the canvas under my scrutiny. Reflected in the protective glass covering the artwork, for a fleeting instant, I thought I glimpsed a familiar figure. The blurred, evanescent profile of my grandmother, akin to a faded memory, seemed to smile while adjusting the painting to its proper alignment. Since then, I've embraced these subtle changes as part of the house's enchantment. Each night, before retiring to bed, I devote a few moments to studying the painting, endeavoring to unravel its newfound secrets. At times, I believe it is my grandmother's way of signaling her continued presence, a silent guardian overseeing me through this enigmatic canvas that shifts and transforms like a living entity. I have shared this tale with none, opting instead to cherish this sweet enigma within my heart. The painting continues its dance of repositioning, but now does so with less frequency, as if it has struck a harmonious balance between revealing itself and safeguarding its mystery. And so I sit in my armchair every evening, cup of tea in hand, listening to the rain drumming against the windows, observing the painting that lives its own existence, engaged in a silent discourse that only we two comprehend. Story 28. The gentle evening breeze whispered through the open window, carrying the delicate fragrance of night-blooming flowers into the room. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I found myself captivated by the shadows waltzing across the walls, painted by the flickering dance of a solitary candle's flame. Beside me on the small table rested my cherished Polaroid camera, a relic passed down from my grandmother, its presence a comforting weight in my hands. Though it had collected dust over time, a mysterious urge stirred within me to pick it up on this particular night. In the soft glow of the dim light, my fingers traced the familiar curves of the camera, drawn instinctively to the shutter button. Without hesitation, I aimed the lens toward the darkest corner of the room and clicked. The sudden burst of light illuminated the space, followed by the mechanical hum of the photo slowly taking form. As the image materialized before my eyes, a peculiar anomaly caught my attention. A vague figure materialized in the corner of the photograph, ethereal and indistinct, like a wisp of smoke taking on human-like contours. Intrigued rather than frightened, I gazed towards the corner it had occupied, finding nothing but empty darkness. Compelled by curiosity, I took another snapshot in the same direction. This time the figure appeared more defined, its presence seemingly closer to the lens, a semblance of a face emerging amidst the blur. A sense of reverence tinged with curiosity enveloped me as I continued capturing image after image, each unveiling the figure with greater clarity. It was as if the entity used the photographs as a conduit to materialize, gradually solidifying its presence in our realm. The ghostly outlines coalesced into a figure adorned in a period dress, reminiscent of a bygone era. A profound stillness settled in the room, thick with an unseen presence that sent a chill down my spine, not of fear but of awe. The air grew heavy, the candle's flame flickering as if in acknowledgement of a spectral visitor. Enthralled by this silent communion, I snapped each photo deliberately, the figure drawing closer with each shot, its features becoming more defined. In the final image captured that evening, the figure loomed so near that it almost eclipsed the frame, a gentle smile gracing the woman's face, her eyes seeming to meet mine through the glossy surface of the Polaroid. A sense of familiarity washed over me, stirring dormant memories from my past, a connection felt but not fully understood. It was only when I retrieved an old photo album, hands trembling imperceptibly, that the pieces fell into place. Among the yellowed pages, I discovered a portrait of my grandmother in her youth, taken with the very same Polaroid. The mirrored smile in the photograph echoed the one captured in the final image, a poignant link between past and present. Arranging the photos in chronological order on the table, a silent narrative unfolded before me, a bridge spanning across realms, crafted through the lens of an antiquated camera. I never attempted to recreate that enigmatic encounter, the Polaroid finding its place back on the shelf, a silent witness to a moment transcending time. Even now, on tranquil evenings bathed in the golden hues of twilight, I find myself drawn to those photographs. At times, the smile captured in the frame seems to subtly shift, as if my grandmother is imparting a message from beyond. In those fleeting moments, the boundary between memory and reality blurs, akin to the delicate surface of a freshly developed Polaroid. Story 29, the grandfather clock in my study announced midnight with its deep, familiar resonance, each chime echoing gently through the hushed air like ripples on a tranquil pond. Nestled in my cozy leather armchair, an aged book lay open on my lap, the pitter-patter of rain against the windowpane providing a soothing backdrop. The old house murmured softly around me, its ancient wooden frame settling into the serenity of the night. My gaze wandered to the hallway door, its dark wood now bathed in the warm glow of my reading lamp. There was a subtle shift in the air, a whisper of change that lingered. Something about the door seemed different tonight, though pinpointing the exact alteration eluded me. Perhaps it was the brass handle catching the light in a new way, or the grain of the wood appearing subtly transformed. Despite residing in this house for a decade and a half, this door now felt oddly foreign to me. Standing up from my chair, I carefully marked my place in the book with a delicate silk ribbon. The floor felt cool beneath my slippers as I made my way closer to the door. With each step, the temperature dropped as if a breath of winter had slipped into this corner of my abode. My hand extended, brushing against the handle, which surprised me with its unexpected warmth, a stark contrast to the chilled air enveloping it. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing the unchanged hallway beyond. The faded wallpaper, the worn carpet runner, and the familiar collection of framed photographs adorned the walls as always. I closed the door, chiding myself for letting my imagination run wild. Perhaps my mind had been influenced by the mystery novels I had been engrossed in lately. That night, my dreams were consumed by doors. They materialized and vanished in improbable locations in garden centers, hovering in the sky, standing solitary on deserted shores. Each door bore the same brass handle as my own hallway entrance, exuding a warmth that defied logic in its surroundings. As the sun began to set the following evening, a peculiar realization dawned on me. The hallway door appeared to have aged overnight, its once dark hue now lighter, as if the passage of decades had been compressed into a single night. The brass handle now sported a patina that hadn't been there before, a subtle transformation that intrigued me. Approaching the door once more, I scrutinized it with newfound curiosity, noting the lighter wood and unfamiliar grain pattern. Even the hinges had transitioned from their usual black iron to a gleaming copper hue. Yet upon opening the door, the hallway remained unaltered, a constant in the midst of change. Night after night, the door continued its enigmatic metamorphosis. It would shift between appearing older and newer, the handle changing position slightly and the frame gaining or losing intricate carvings. I embarked on a meticulous journaling endeavor, capturing each alteration with precise sketches and detailed descriptions. The door never morphed when under my watchful eye. The changes transpired during the depths of night, when the house slumbered and my focus wandered elsewhere. One evening, driven by curiosity, I resolved to observe the door throughout the night. I positioned my armchair to face it directly, brewed a pot of robust tea, and settled in for a night of vigil. The ticking of the grandfather clock marked the passing hours as my eyes grew heavy, yet my resolve remained unshakable. At 3:17 a.m., the lights in my study flickered briefly, casting a momentary shadow over the room. In that fleeting darkness, a subtle shift in the air pressure heralded a new transformation. When the light steadied, the door had evolved once more. The warm oak had transmuted into rich mahogany, intricate silver inlays dancing across its surface like ethereal whispers. Drawn to the door by an unseen force, my hand reached for the handle now fashioned from carved crystal instead of brass. However, a sudden hesitation gripped me as the air thrummed with a gentle vibration, akin to the fading echo of a struck bell. And then a startling revelation struck me. The door bore no keyhole, never had one in any of its forms. Yet every morning as I passed through, a keyhole had always been there just below the handle. This realization perplexed me to the core. The following day, I delved into my journal entries, searching for any mention of the keyhole, only to find none. Had I overlooked such a fundamental detail, or was there a more enigmatic force at play? The question lingered in my mind, an elusive puzzle demanding a solution. Now, as twilight descends each evening, I ponder the enigmatic door and its nightly transmutations. Sometimes a fleeting glimpse of alternate hallways teases me from beneath the gap, each hallway adorned with different carpets, wallpapers, and photographs. Yet upon opening the door, my own hallway persists unchanged. I toyed with the idea of rearranging the photographs to test the reality of my surroundings, but an unexplained hesitance stayed my hand. A whispered caution from the recesses of my mind warned against delving too deeply into the spaces between perception and truth. The door continues to evolve, each night unveiling a new iteration. I've grown accustomed to its silent metamorphoses, finding a strange comfort in their occurrence. I often ponder whether it is truly the door that changes or if my perception of it shifts with each viewing. Perhaps both are true, or perhaps neither. One certainty remains with the striking of midnight by the grandfather clock and the gentle patter of rain against the windows. I await with anticipation the unveiling of the door's next form. eager to unravel the mysteries it harbors in the quiet hours before dawn. Story 30, the winter twilight draped my bedroom walls in shades of royal purple as a gentle rain tapped against the window panes with a soothing rhythm. The flickering candle on my antique vanity mirror, passed down from my grandmother, cast dancing shadows that swirled in harmony with the growing darkness. A blend of wax's sweet fragrance and the comforting scent of crackling firewood downstairs filled the air, cocooning me in warmth. In that tranquil moment of solitude, a peculiar sight caught my eye. While fixing my hair before the mirror, a fleeting glimpse of a slender, towering figure seemed to glide behind me, an ethereal presence navigating the air. Instinctively, I turned, only to find emptiness enveloping the room. Returning my gaze to the mirror, I dismissed the vision as a mere interplay of light and shadow. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to the reflections surrounding me. The gleaming surface of the freshly polished wooden table, the evening glow on the window glass, even the tiny rearview mirror in my car, all seemed to capture fleeting images of that enigmatic presence. It was as though a parallel realm of reflections existed, where this silent figure observed me with patient curiosity. Devoid of distinct features, the figure exuded a soft, silvery luminescence, hinting at a gentle smile or a subtle gesture, as if attempting to convey a message. Instead of fear, a sense of familiarity washed over me, as though this presence had always been intertwined with my life, awaiting my awakening. One tranquil evening, engrossed in a book in my cherished armchair, the figure in the window's reflection appeared more defined than usual. Rather than vanishing upon direct scrutiny, it lingered, growing clearer. Amidst the room's hush, a faint rustle, akin to silk stirred by an invisible breeze, reached my ears despite the stillness. Rising slowly, I approached the window, and to my surprise, the figure mirrored my movements from the other side of the glass. Details emerged, its flowing attire, graceful movements akin to a dance suspended in air. Extending a hand towards me, I reciprocated almost instinctively. In that poignant instant, a revelation unfurled. Each appearance of the figure ushered in a profound calm. Sounds dulled, hues softened, time itself seemed to elongate, as if a slice of serenity from another realm had breached reality's veil. Seeking out reflections became a ritual, not out of fear or intrigue, but to bask once more in the tranquility the figure bestowed. It frequented moments of stillness, when worries and anxieties ebbed from my mind, arriving like a guardian of peace. With time, the figure evolved into a silent companion, its essence a comforting presence in the tapestry of my days. I refrained from delving into its origins or purpose, understanding that certain enigmas require no unraveling. The mystery, I realized, held a beauty surpassing any solution. Even now, as the sun's final rays filter through the windows, casting elongated shadows across the room, I pause to observe the reflections. And in those silent interludes when the world holds its breath, I glimpse it still, a luminous figure dancing amidst the mirrors, bearing a tranquility that whispers of unsolved mysteries, reminding me that some secrets are best left uncharted. Story 31. In the hush of the night, my footsteps whispered through the ancient wooden corridor, each step a soft echo in the stillness. The floorboards murmured beneath me, a gentle song mingling with the patter of rain on the window panes. A sweet fragrance lingered in the air, a blend of aged wood and yellowed pages, wrapping me in a comforting embrace. Standing before the door at the hallway's end, leading to a room untouched for months, I paused, drawn by an unspoken invitation. The lock shimmered faintly in the dim lamplight, a silent beckoning. I vividly recalled securing the door last, the ritual of turning the key thrice and testing the handle, a habitual dance of reassurance. But this night held a subtle shift. An icy chill enveloped the space around the door, a delicate dusting of time settling on the brass knob in intricate patterns, like whispers etched by unseen hands. The door exuded a faint warmth, a contradiction to its isolated state with no source of heat within. Placing my hand on its surface, I felt a subtle pulse, a hidden heartbeat. Leaning in, I strained to catch any sound beyond the threshold. In the profound quiet, a distant rhythm akin to a slumbering breath teased at my senses. Retrieving the key from my robe's pocket, it exuded an unfamiliar warmth, a silent companion in this nocturnal exploration. With deliberate care, I inserted the key into the lock, its resistance a siren's call. A gentle turn released a soft click, unlocking a world veiled in mystery. Swinging open the door, a wave of warmth and fragrant whispers enveloped me, reminiscent of freshly brewed vanilla tea. Moonbeams danced through sheer curtains, casting a silver glow upon the room. Familiar yet transformed, the space greeted me with subtle rearrangements. Books stood in a new formation, their spines weaving cryptic tales on the shelves. An armchair, once static, now angled toward the window, a spectral presence. Approaching the mahogany desk, my fingertips traced ghostly imprints in the dust, vanishing like forgotten memories. A weathered parchment bore a single sentence in a script resembling my own, yet foreign to my recollection. Time flows differently here. With each word absorbed, my breath synchronized with the ethereal dance of the curtains, a choreography of unseen forces. The room's silence pulsed with a heartbeat of its own, a symphony of whispers too delicate to discern. Sinking into the velvet embrace of the armchair, I caught a fleeting movement in the window's reflection, a wisp of a figure lingering on the edge of perception. Startled, I turned to find only the moon's playful shadows. Eyes drifting shut, the room's essence enveloped me, a lullaby of tranquility. Upon opening them, a subtle shift had transpired, every object minutely displaced. The once empty cup now radiated warmth, tendrils of steam caressing the ceiling. Rising from the chair, a shroud of enigma draped over me, urging me towards the door. Soundlessly, I crossed the room, each step a ghostly ballet on the wooden stage. Pausing at the threshold, I cast a final glance over the slumbering chamber. With a tender sigh, I closed the door, the click of the lock a soothing melody in the silent expanse. Since that fateful night, a hint of vanilla tea lingers in the air as if memories drift on unseen currents. The room, a keeper of secrets, continues its clandestine existence, a realm best left undisturbed in its timeless tranquility. Story 32. The night lay still, cloaked in a shroud of mist that turned the street lamps into faint, distant stars. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I gazed absently at the shadows pirouetting on the walls of my study, cast by the flickering candle flame on the side table. The aged wooden floor exuded a familiar musty fragrance, a testament to the years of stories it held within its grains, while the only sound was the gentle tick-tock of the pendulum clock. In a moment of quiet reflection, a peculiar sight caught my eye. Amidst the usual shadows gracefully swaying with the dance of the flame, there was one that moved with an odd, independent rhythm. While the others followed the flickering light, this particular shadow seemed to have a mind of its own, exploring the wall's surface in a curious manner. Initially, I brushed it off as a trick of my weary mind. After all, late nights of work had a way of playing tricks on my senses. Closing the book that rested on my lap, I rose to investigate the anomaly. The shadow, sensing my scrutiny, timidly retreated to the corner of the room. Drawing closer, I examined the wall, its textured surface creating natural play of light and shadow. Yet the one that had captured my attention stood out dense, defined, as if composed of substance rather than absence. Tentatively, I reached out to touch the wall where the shadow had lingered. The surface felt unnaturally cold, chilling my fingertips. In the days that followed, more peculiarities unraveled. The shadow appeared sporadically, always in my solitude, always when the light was dim enough for shadows to exist, yet not so dark to erase them completely. Sometimes it manifested in the hallway, other times in the kitchen, always with its curious, almost shy demeanor. One evening, while seated at my desk engrossed in writing, a presence enveloped me from behind. Not an eerie sensation of being watched, but a subtle awareness akin to feeling a feline gaze upon you. Slowly turning, I beheld the shadow projected on the closed door of my study. This time, it held its ground, observing me with a gaze that seemed to study rather than scrutinize. In that moment, a revelation struck me. This shadow had no origin. All shadows we know stem from objects, people, or creatures, but this one existed independently, like a sentient entity in its own right. I began a silent dialogue with it through gestures and movements. In response, it danced on the wall, weaving shapes that almost resembled letters, fleeting before they could be deciphered. Sometimes a message seemed to surface, while other times they dissolved into mere whimsical patterns. With time, its presence became a comforting companion, a sentinel of the nocturnal hours. On restless nights, I sought its familiar movement among the ordinary shadows, awaiting its silent company. The enigma of its existence eluded me despite my efforts. I delved into research, perused ancient tomes, and consulted experts on the paranormal, yet no answer sufficed. Theories ranged from physical anomalies to residual energy manifestations, but none captured the essence of this ethereal visitor. Now, seated in my armchair penning these lines, I noticed the shadow's gentle sway in my periphery. It has woven itself into the fabric of my daily life, a mystery I've embraced without complete comprehension. I often ponder if it, too, contemplates my essence, if I am as enigmatic to it as it is to me. As the candle nears its end, I anticipate the shadows fade into darkness, awaiting its return with the birth of a new light that grants it existence. And I shall remain here, in this silent communion between a man and a shadow without form. Story 33. The November breeze whispered through the dried leaves scattered on the driveway as I gazed at the abandoned mansion looming against the heavy gray sky. Known as the house that time forgot, though in truth, it had been a home to someone long ago, a memory now faded into obscurity. I ventured closer to the weathered gate, its iron bars chilling beneath my touch. The air carried a scent of damp moss and ancient stone, a fragrance of forgotten stories. The garden, overgrown with tangled brambles and reaching nettles, climbed the weathered walls in a wild embrace. Despite its neglected state, the mansion exuded a haunting elegance that captured my attention. As a real estate agent tasked with evaluating the property, I had a duty to assess its worth. The current owner, a distant gentleman residing overseas, sought to part ways with the estate he had inherited but never visited. The mystery of the mansion beckoned me further. Wandering through the unkempt garden, a peculiar discovery caught my eye. Freshly trodden paths weaved through the overgrowth, hinting at recent visitors. But who could be traversing these grounds unseen? The nearby neighbors claimed the property remained untouched by human presence. With a soft creak, the front door yielded to my touch, revealing an interior veiled in a bluish haze filtered through closed shutters. The atmosphere inside was thick with dust and the scent of aged wood, casting a spell of timelessness over the rooms. Each step across the creaking floorboards echoed through the cavernous halls as I explored the shadowed chambers. Furniture draped in yellowed sheets cast ghostly silhouettes in the dim light, while veiled mirrors on the walls played tricks with shifting reflections. Ascending the polished wooden staircase, my hand trailed along the banister worn smooth by generations past. The upper floor greeted me with a row of closed doors, each concealing a silent room frozen in time. It was in the final chamber that a subtle disturbance caught my attention, a bedroom, feminine in essence, adorned with a delicate layer of untouched dust disrupted by recent contact. A silver brush lay on the dresser, accompanied by strands of dark, fresh hair untouched by time's embrace. A sense of unease crept over me as I observed the meticulously arranged bed, its lace coverlet bearing a faint indentation as if someone had just risen. A fleeting movement in the mirror startled me, a phantom figure seated on the bed, gone as quickly as it appeared. Descending the stairs hastily, the afternoon light shifted, casting deeper shadows within the silent interior. The mirrors seemed to harbor secrets as I hastened towards the exit, only to be halted by a soft, haunting melody drifting from above. An ancient tune, melancholic and faint, tugged at my senses, its origin shrouded in mystery. Leaving the mansion behind, I closed the door on the whispers of the past, the garden now tranquil in the fading light. Glancing back, a pale glow flickered behind an upstairs window, a silent presence watching from within. In the days that followed, my report on the property detailed its condition and potential, omitting the peculiar occurrences within its walls but hinting at a unique allure that might captivate a discerning buyer. The house lingered on the market, a silent sentinel awaiting its destiny. Each passing visit brought glimpses of a spectral figure moving through the upper chambers, a lingering presence bound to the mansion's essence. Perhaps the true secret of the never-inhabited house was not its lack of occupants, but the eternal spirit that dwelled within, forever tethered to its shadowed halls. Story 34, the hotel corridor glowed in a soft amber light, filtering through glass lampshades reminiscent of golden honey. It was the late hours of the night, and the only sound piercing the silence was the gentle hum of air conditioners. Dragging my suitcase with silent wheels over the deep burgundy carpet, I made my way towards the elevator, enveloped in the weariness of a day filled with lengthy business meetings. Pressing the button for the elevator, I watched my reflection blur in the metallic doors. The digital numbers displayed above the elevator ticked slowly. 654. A subtle green light emitted from the display, casting a soft glow on the walls. With a quiet chime, the elevator doors slid open, revealing a small space adorned with mirrors and dark wood paneling. I selected the top floor, the 7th, and leaned against the back wall, closing my eyes briefly. As the elevator began its ascent with a seamless, tranquil motion, the mechanical sounds were barely audible, akin to a deep, steady breath. When I opened my eyes, a peculiar sight caught my attention in the mirror in front of me. It seemed as though my reflection moved with a slight delay, trailing my movements by a fraction of a second. Shaking off the odd sensation as a product of exhaustion, I refocused my gaze. Arriving at my floor, I stepped out into the hallway, only to be met with an unsettling feeling. The carpet beneath my feet had transformed into a dark green hue, starkly different from the burgundy below. The wall lamps exuded an antique charm, boasting an Art Deco design that had eluded my notice before. Although the elevator display confirmed the 7th floor, the ambience had shifted entirely. The hallway appeared elongated, narrower, and the air carried a distinct scent, a blend of old books and aged wood. The room doors bore unconventional labels, 7A, 7B, 7C, diverging from the standard numerical sequence I had anticipated. Turning back towards the elevator, I found the doors had sealed shut. Pressing the call button yielded no response. The display above remained dark, as if the elevator had never existed. The silence grew dense, almost palpable. Navigating the corridor at a leisurely pace, I attempted to reorient myself. The light seemed to pulsate gently, as if drawing breath. Each door I passed mirrored its predecessor, yet emanated a unique aura, hinting at concealed narratives behind the dark wood facades. Arriving at the end of the hallway, I discerned a figure seated in an antique armchair. An elderly doorman, dressed in a vintage uniform and boasting impeccably groomed white hair, gazed up from his book with a kind smile. "Are you lost?" he inquired, his voice calm and familiar, as though anticipating my arrival. "I believe so," I responded. "I was headed to the 7th floor, but this place—" "Ah, this is indeed the 7th floor," he interjected with a cryptic smile. "Simply not the one you sought. You see, this elevator possesses a peculiar quality. It guides weary travelers to where they are needed, rather than where they presume to go." Surveying my surroundings with newfound acuity, I noticed intricate details. Gilded frames adorning the walls held monochrome photographs of joyous figures clad in period attire, while an antique clock displayed an enigmatic time, its hands tracing a reverse path. "Fear not," the doorman continued, gently closing his book. "The elevator shall return when the timing aligns. In the interim, why not take a seat? Time is of no essence here." Nestling into the adjacent armchair, I felt the tendrils of exhaustion unraveling gradually. The once disquieting silence now cradled me in a soothing embrace, akin to a comforting warmth. The doorman resumed his reading, and I found myself entranced by the shadows dancing upon the walls, weaving hypnotic patterns. Time seemed to stretch infinitely, blurring the boundaries between minutes and hours. The counterclockwise cadence of the clock's ticking wove a tranquil melody, resembling a gentle lullaby. At some indistinct juncture, the familiar chime of the elevator resonated through the hallway. "There," the doorman remarked without lifting his gaze from the book, "I believe it is time for you to return to your designated floor." Rising to my feet, a sense of inexplicable rejuvenation washed over me. Progressing towards the elevator, I turned to express gratitude to the doorman, only to find the armchair vacant. The weathered tome lay atop the armrest, its leather cover gleaming faintly in the ambient light. The elevator doors parted noiselessly, ushering me inside for a brief journey. Exiting on my floor, I encountered the familiar corridor adorned with burgundy carpeting and contemporary wall fixtures. Approaching my room, I inserted the key into the lock. Before stepping inside, I cast a final glance towards the elevator. For a fleeting moment, the digital display flickered, revealing not a number but an unfamiliar symbol. It swiftly reverted to normalcy, displaying a simple 7. Since that enigmatic night, each elevator excursion in a hotel invokes contemplation. Will it transport me to my intended destination, or to where destiny beckons? And on the quietest of nights, a faint rustling of pages echoes through the corridors, as if invisible hands turn the leaves of an ancient tome in a realm nestled between floors. Story 35. The autumn breeze tenderly brushed against the tree leaves, orchestrating a gentle melody that harmonized with the hushed whispers of the surrounding crowd. Seated on my cherished bench in the park, I observed the steady stream of passers-by strolling along the paved pathways. The air held a crispness that carried the fragrance of moist soil and damp wood. Though a book rested in my hands, my focus strayed to a subtle, nearly imperceptible sensation that had lingered with me for days. It all commenced discreetly. One morning en route to work, a tingling sensation prickled at my neck as though unseen eyes were fixed upon me. Glancing back, I encountered only the usual rush of commuters hastening toward their destinations. In the following days, that feeling intensified, becoming more palpable. During lunch breaks, grocery runs, or moments at my beloved cafe, it persisted. As people continued to flow past my bench, some solitary, others accompanied a woman in a crimson coat paused to check her phone. An elderly gentleman sauntered with his polished cane. Yet amidst these familiar figures, an intangible difference lingered, eluding definition. Closing my book, I rose from the bench, opting for a stroll. The sky transitioned into amber hues, while streetlights flickered to life one by one. I traversed the main avenue, my strides echoing on the gravel path. The sensation lingered, akin to an unseen shadow trailing me at a constant distance. Halting before a storefront, I feigned interest in the displayed wares. Peering into the glass, I discreetly scrutinized the passers-by reflected behind me. And then a peculiar realization dawned. A face within the crowd seemed ever present. Obscured and elusive, it weaved between individuals, materializing and vanishing with seamless fluidity. Continuing my walk, I remained vigilant. Veering onto side streets, the crowd dwindled, yet the presence endured. Seated on a bench in a tranquil square, encircled by illuminated windows of ancient edifices, I sensed the chill in the air as the first stars emerged in the evening sky. It was then that a disquieting revelation struck me. Not a singular gaze trailed me, but many. It appeared as though numerous individuals took turns, passing an unseen baton in a silent, meticulously choreographed ballet. Certain faces recurred more frequently. A young woman with an azure scarf, a bespectacled middle-aged man, a boy bearing a backpack. Rising slowly, I made my way home, burdened by the weight of those unseen gazes. The streets lay deserted now, yet the sensation only heightened in the nocturnal stillness. Upon reaching my abode, I seated myself by the window, observing the bustling street below. People continued their comings and goings, some pausing fleetingly, others striding forth. Contemplating how many were truly bound for a destination and how many were players in this mysterious spectacle, I was perturbed by their guise of utter normalcy, blending seamlessly with the crowd. As the city lights flickered to life one by one, I pondered the essence of this silent vigil. Who were these watchers? What quest propelled their surveillance? And above all, why me? Unanswered queries lingered in the air while night descended, cloaking the city in its somber shroud. Since that day, I've acclimated to this newfound awareness. At times, I endeavor to discern my observers, at others, I feign ignorance. Yet they persist, akin to shadows flitting at the peripheries of my daily existence. Amidst the nocturnal quietness, while gazing from my window at the emptying streets, I speculate whether they, too, contemplate me from their abodes, preparing for another day of this enigmatic waltz of gazes and enigmatic presences.